Thank you. First of all, I just want to make a couple of comments. Thank you very much. Be easy on me today. There's lots going on. Our CAO is off sick, but he is on. He's listening. He will help us anytime we can. Our chair is dealing with a family member passing. And so our thoughts are with her right now while she's going through that. I have Director Jackman up here just to help with chaos, and Sangeeta is going to help with anything that Stuart may be able to pass on through that way. So with saying that, we do have, I think, one delegation. Yes. So we'll start the meeting. I believe that roll call, you've got everybody on.
Oh, yes, the only person I'm missing is Director Casely.
Yeah.
And nobody's here for Director Casely? An alternate, not seeing anybody, okay. So we'll, first of all, I'll start with a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge and respect the Indigenous peoples within whose traditional lands we're meeting today. And we'll adopt the agenda. The agenda for the September 12, 2024 regular open board meeting be adopted with the inclusion of items 5.3, Living Lakes Canada, Canadian Federal Agri Science Program, and the addition of the addendum before circulation. McLaren Co. and Maine. Anything else that needs to be added? Hearing none, all in favor? Carried. Any opposed? Good. Adoption of the minutes. That the minutes of August 15, 2024, the meeting be adopted as circulated. Anybody see? I'm going to use first name, sorry. Director Hennegraff and Director McFadden. Any corrections? Hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Introductions. Now, the CAO is online. Would you like to do the introductions, or would you like Sangeeta to do the introductions, Stuart?
No, Chair, I can do the introductions. I might be a little bit rough speaking, but I'll chime in when I can. My apologies for not being present. I'm just at the tail end of something severe this week, and it's not good for probably me to be around people. But thanks through the chair. Our first announcement is a congratulations to Amanda McIntyre. She's won the competition for our building manager. Been with the organization for a while and has made that next step. So congratulations to her. Emma Middleton joins us as a replacement to Julie Rafuse, who left us in the Creston administration role. And then finally, Carolyn Hogan joins us as a project manager. And on the agenda, although it doesn't say it, Carolyn's replacing Patrick Thrift, who left us actually in March. And it's been quite a little bit of a haul to get someone in that position. So we're pleased to have Carolyn in there to support AJ and his team.
Thank you. And welcome. It doesn't look like any of them are in the room for us to see their faces. So we have a delegation, and Trisha and I don't know, Salida, welcome.
I'm Salita Burke. I'm VP of the West Kootenay Cycling Coalition, and we've been working on a dream. Castlegar Nelson Active Transportation Corridor Vision Plan. This plan lays out a viable route for multi-use path to connect Castlegar and Nelson. Once implemented, the corridor will be a 45-kilometer long transportation route that encompasses all forms of mobility, including walking, cycling, transit, commuting to work, getting to school, recreation, socializing, or even running errands, with the benefit of supporting active lifestyles and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. The vision provides options and recommendations for additional infrastructure such as bridges and convenient access to other types of transport, linking neighborhoods together along the way. The plan breaks down the route in 6 key segments, which we have outlined here. Nelson to Tagum is the first segment. And then some key features on that is we're proposing a pedestrian bridge be built across the old Tagum Bridge pilings. And then we go from Tagum to Bonington. There's some rather steep bluffs we have to get around onto Slocan Junction, which links up nicely with the Slocan Rail Trail. Terry's to Glade, which is I think quite a high traffic area, and there are some side roads that would be viable for the route. Also through Drums, and then onto Castlegar. This corridor would service about 20,000 residents living along the route. It's all ages and all types of mobility. So it's not just people cycling, you know, think about moms that you see pushing their strollers along the highway. I just wish for them to have a separate, safe pathway. I also like to point out too, it's a 45-kilometer route, and we do sometimes get comments that no one will ever ride from Nelson to Castlegar, Castlegar to Nelson. It's really actually not meant for that. It's meant to connect all the communities in between. And we know there's lots of traffic going from Drums to Castlegar or from Tagum to Nelson, and this would give people another option. Safety is the #1 reason why people choose to drive over other forms of transportation. There's not a safe route through this area. Up to 12,000 cars travel daily between Castlegar and Nelson at high speeds. So it's just not comfortable for other vulnerable road users. For an example, I rode my bike home from Tagum to Beasley the other day, and it takes me about 15 minutes. It's about 5 kilometers. And in that time, I counted 85 vehicles that passed me. And that's just going one way. That's not counting the oncoming traffic. So it is a danger. 70% of emissions in the region are from transportation. So this would help significantly reduce that. There would be lower healthcare costs. People would be getting regular exercise. It would be better air quality. Less traffic also means less collisions, and it's better for drivers. A 13-year study found that protected bike lanes led to a drastic decline in fatalities for all road users. That includes drivers. It's also more affordable. It costs on average $11,000 a year to own and operate a vehicle, and many households have 2. And that's just the cost on the individual. It doesn't even include the cost to society, which includes pollution, healthcare, road maintenance, all of that stuff adds up, and everyone pays for it, whether or not you drive. The average driver can pay on the low end up to $650,000 to operate their car in a lifetime. And the cost to society is about 40% of that. So if you think about it, that's really funneling a lot of money away from our communities. So people are using other transport options, we keep more money in our area. It's also better use of land, making more room for housing, less parking. It aligns with RDCK objectives. We can be working with the provincial government to connect more transportation. And of course, this grant that we got from the government of Canada has helped us put forward this proposal. You know, the RDCK is also encouraged to work with local community groups, which we're doing right now by putting this plan together. The other thing that's on that list of objectives is, you know, to look at assets that we currently have and how we might better use those. And making, cycling and walking to those assets a lot easier. One of our proposals was to make, community halls into transit hubs. They're already ideally located along the route. They're close to where people live. They already have infrastructure in place, so it would be, cost savings. And then, of course, we can also look at what other regional districts are doing. So the RDKB adopted the Climate Action Plan in the fall of 2022, and they're currently working on a Green Link, which is a pathway as well. There's the Telfaw Smithers pathway. It's about 15 kilometers linking those two communities. There's the North Star pathway, it links Kimberley to Cranbrook, which is about 28 kilometers. The interesting thing about that pathway and also the Canmore Banff Legacy Trail is that there's no communities in between. Whereas our pathway would link all of those different communities in between. So it would definitely have more traffic, not just recreational, but also for transportation. And then I also wanted to compare how this plan aligns with the Clean BC mandates. So Clean BC proposes that walking, cycling, and public transit trips being increased by 30% by 2030. So that's actually quite a significant goal. 2030 is not that far away. Reducing kilometers driven by personal vehicles to decrease by 27% in 2030. The one disappointing thing about the Clean BC mandates is it doesn't really tell you how we're going to afford to do that. So I did a little bit of research, and the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, or MOTI, has an approximate annual budget of $9 billion. And this year, the province announced 80 active transportation projects worth $24 million. I mean, that's such an incredibly tiny sum of money compared to $9 billion. It's like a rounding error. So I think that there's room for us to ask for more of that budget. So we suggest that if we need to meet Clean BC mandate, that provincial budget should reprioritize about 25% of that $9 billion towards public and active transportation, which would mean I would suggest 15% for public transit, $1.35 billion per year, and a 10% increase for active transportation could mean up to $900 million per year. And then to put that in comparison, I put together some graphs just to sort of show you, how small an investment this is, and even of 900 million, which is only 10% of 9 billion, the $66 million price tag for this pathway is not even 1%, 0.75% of that budget. So it's pretty small. I think that we can encourage the provincial government to help us fund this. And so when we look at some of the funding options, there are some active transportation infrastructure grants that we can apply for immediately. And the first one, the application deadline is October 31st. We can look at Canada Community Building Fund. We can seek some private funding. Perhaps even Kalashnikov will be interested in using its new manufactured wood products to do a demo project for the Kagam Bridge. There's the federal government. We can partner with tourism, the cities, Nelson and Castlegar, highways. They're actually quite supportive in our area. And then the Trans-Canada Trail. The interesting thing about the Trans-Canada Trail is it's currently on the south side and it's really a recreational trail. And the Nelson Cycling Club did a great job aligning that because they were able to get a lot of funding to cover a lot of their trail building and other amenities. If we were able to build that pathway and have it designated the Trans-Canada Trail from Nelson to Castlegar, we would have access to a lot of funding. So we could use that to upgrade community halls, put other amenities along the way. I'll cut it super short.
2 minutes.
It's time.
Yeah.
So on behalf of the West Kootenay Cycling Coalition, we want to thank you for support in developing this plan. And as a funding partner, the RDCK helped us make this dream into a viable plan. We now ask that the plan be adopted, allowing us to proceed to the next stage easily. It's the West Kootenay Cycling Coalition's intention to make this dream into a reality. We ask that the RDCK continue to support and approve of ongoing regional partnership with us so that we can proceed with the important work of obtaining capital funding to complete this project. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have a speakers list of 2 people, Director Popoff and Director Graham and Director Vandenberg. 3 people, and then that should be our time. Director Popoff.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Through the Chair, it appears that you've covered a lot of work that's done, quite extensive, and I congratulate you on your homework that you've covered all the bases, the costs, etc. One of the concerns that I have is public consultation. Over the last couple of years, there were some residents that expressed that we don't do enough public consultation, that we go forward with different projects without doing our public consultation. So my question is, because it is a lot of dollars for our area, I mean, provincially maybe not, but what amount of public consultation have you done?
Actually, we did do some extensive consultation, and during the plan, we did host a bunch of open houses. We also conducted a survey, but I did actually make some presentations to Tagum Hall, the community hall, and also the Blewett Community Association. We discussed the pathway as well as the bridge, and I was overwhelmed with support, to be honest. And we do know from the Climate Action Plan work that the RDCK has been doing, that active transportation is one of the top 3 things that residents are asking for. So, yeah.
Yeah, a supplemental, one more supplemental
Yeah,
here
quickly.
is it does fall with the regional district objective of active transportation, and that's good. I think in your report, you mentioned that it'll benefit around 20,000 residents. Out of 20,000 residents, how many support that?
Well, that number we don't have, I'm afraid to say, but I will say this, you know, when MOTI puts roads in, there's very little public consultation. So I find it a bit disappointing how much is required for a pathway, which is an obvious benefit to everyone, even if you don't drive.
Thank you for your answer.
Hey, Director Graham.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you very much for this excellent presentation and all the work that you're doing for the community. I think it's great. My comment or question is just, there's been some work done already on looking at the bridge between tech. So I just want to make sure that you're connecting with the Blewett Society. There are reports. I just don't want to see a duplication of work being done.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
Yeah, so if you haven't connected with Valerie Evans, and please do, because I dug up those reports, we found them recently, and so she has them, and you can sort of go from there instead of going from 0 on that point.
I absolutely agree with you, and I actually have met with Valerie,
Okay,
and that was the plan, that we should work together for sure.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Vandenberg.
Good morning, and through the chair, good report. Just kind of going through it very quickly right now. It's quite in depth. It looks like it's well done. My questions, what do you envision for seasonal or winter utilization? The path, according to the report, looks like about 2 meter paved. So what do you see happening for winter use?
Well, we would love to see it cleared. Perhaps it could be just part of MODI's responsibility. Or I don't, perhaps in the future, RDCK can take it on as a public service that's maybe part of public transit. But there is equipment that you can get to clear it in the winter.
So then the plan doesn't cover that, because I didn't see it in there. I'm from area C, so I'm other side of the regional district.
Yeah, our plan right now is really just to get it built. And then we would have to, of course, look at some maintenance, but you know, going back to roads, I mean, it'd be infinitely less than than maintaining highways. And there's like less wear and tear. So, you know, the heavy weight of vehicles makes the asphalt deteriorate a lot faster. And yeah, it's just gonna be more cost effective. Then we would have to purchase some equipment to clear it, but once it's cleared, it's a lot easier to maintain.
Supplemental.
Yes.
Thank you. And so, yes, the maintenance component of that is an important piece of this conversation.
It is, yes.
That needs to be explored a little bit. But my question is now to staff. I understand that you're asking for an adoption of this plan. I'm not quite sure, is that what we're going to do today, or is this for information?
This a delegation we don't do. This
Right.
is
So
a
this is
delegation.
just for information.
Mhm.
Great.
No
Thank-
action.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. Have a great day, you can stick around, we're gonna be a fun day. Not that every meeting is fun. Are you gonna flick around or are you gonna stay there?
Oh.
I'll just give you a minute.
Get back into it, not just looking at that.
Okay, we'll go on to bylaw 2959. And I think we'll start with a little bit of a discussion first before.
Well,
Do you want to?
I,
you wanna speak?
if I might
Yes.
share, well, I was gonna speak a little bit maybe after some of the staff, there are, in my mind, issues that Mr. Gould can clarify for us in terms of requirements, provincial requirements, and then I think either Stuart or Sangeeta have updates on the budget questions that have come, so that maybe those questions can be answered now instead of awkwardly coming up at public time. So wherever you want to go with that, Chair. Then I have my thoughts prior to moving the recommendation, if I might come back to that later.
How about we, we'll start with what your thoughts are, let staff, and then whatever is not covered, you guys can cover if there's more. Does that sound good?
Sure.
Or we- Yeah.
So, this is a unique service. It's one of what I view as a voluntary taxation, parcel tax. I thought there was a great deal of interest expressed in the years leading up to this, but we thought, well, we're gonna test this by referendum. And since testing the first three areas, A, D, and E by referendum, there have been additional areas tested, whether or not people want this service. A few things sort of happened along the way, so that created complications. During the referendum, following the lead of a approach taken to the East Kootenays, we indicated and wrote into the bylaw that we would have a review or a milestone at 10 years. That doesn't necessarily mean the service goes away at 10 years. It means that that is a critical milestone to address. In my mind, how is it going? And in my mind, can I go back to the public? In the interim, we've had two more areas come into the service, so 10 years is a meaningless number. It's not logical. 10 years from what for who? So we're gonna have some kind of rolling process, or we're gonna do a reset and think about what's logical. What I've heard from my colleagues and colleagues can speak for themselves, I think we agree we need public consultation right now, really soon, in the coming months, for areas A, D, and E, so everybody understands what's the service done, what's its delivered, what are the options? We need that consultation. We also really need a committee, because this is a service with a growing budget where the conversation is in the public eye, the way that this is. It's not in the public eye. If we have a committee, anybody can listen to what we talk about as quorum for service members, participants in the service. Anybody can see what we talk about it as we talk about it. And in fact, then we're discouraged from talking about it in any other format where we have quorum. It's a public discussion. We need that. That committee needs the terms of reference. That will establish maybe some logical milestones, which I think Mr. Gould has great ideas on, about how and when we review changes to the service, what that means, redirecting how the funds are used. And that will be, in my mind, largely based on what the public who voted to do this service, have this service, tell me that they think is the logical approach. So in a little while, I'm going to support the recommendations because it is part of the logical step to clean things up. And then I'm also continue to push and drive to have these other elements brought in, the committee, the transparency, the public process. And I have confidence that all of that will happen based on recent discussions. So, but I won't move the recommendation. I think my colleagues.
No, does staff want to respond to any of that? To add, no? Okay, Director Graham.
Thank you. So through the chair, there has been a lot of resident input as of late regarding this service, and there has been some mixed feedback. And I don't believe that the 10 years was a mistake. I recall being at a public meeting in Caslow, and I think Gary might have even been there because I gave a speech about dogs. So anyways, and I remember being told that this would be reviewed in 10 years. So we definitely need to do the review we were promised. It's too bad that we didn't bring this forward last year. So we could have been doing the review now, and we wouldn't be now under the situation where we are, where if we do not do something, that the regional district won't be allowed to get taxation. So there's some further issues that have come up from the public, including that general admin fees are not allowed. And so I would be asking for the staff to explain that. That's not something I completely understand. I'm still new here. And I agree with Director Jackman that this should be a committee that is public. We did have a meeting. It was not public. I, again, don't understand that. And for Area E, I would support like a 1-year extension right now to allow the review to be completed and to allow staff to come up with some kind of plan. But I could not support this just being put aside and just keep going until we understand how our residents feel. Like, I think this is a really important thing because this was a new and voluntary tax when it came in. So it's not something that the regional district is required. If memory serves, and it's a long time ago, it was very close, the referendum, to my memory. I mean, it's a long time ago. So I just think it's really important that we do what we said. We give the opportunity to the residents to have their review, and that review needs to include a financial review. How much of the money that was collected went to the projects? You know, it's the same concern we have when we sponsor a child overseas, like how much of the money gets through to the actual person. I mean, I still do it, but you know, I think the residents want to know. They want to know how much of their taxation is going to the actual projects, and I think that needs to be part of the review.
Okay, Director, Tom, would you like to respond?
Respectfully through the chair. Yeah, I'd like to address the general administration fee. Respectfully through the chair, my name is Tom Newell. I'm a research analyst for the Regional District of Central Kootenay. In regards to the general administration fee, there's a bit of confusion, and in part it's because of the way that our budgets are written. There is a line on a provincial government website that says parcel taxes cannot be used for general administration. Okay, and what that's actually referring to is parcel taxes cannot be used to fund service S100, our general administration service. And I've gone to the provincial government for confirmation with the local government inspector around this. That general administration fee, which you see in our budgets, is actually specific to the costs associated with the service. And again, I confirmed this with the provincial inspector that yes, we can use the parcel tax specifically for the costs associated with the service, such as writing the checks, having meetings around these things, specific to that service and stuff. What we cannot do is use a parcel tax to raise revenue for service S100. So again, there's a bit of semantics involved in here around the names we have used, and you know, it may be good to review that when we're doing our budgets and change the name of that to prevent confusion in the future. I believe the second question was, where's the authority for consultation going to reside? Currently, staff are working on a committee bylaw. It's my opinion that the authority for review to the service or to create consultation or to trigger a significant look at the finances should reside in a committee bylaw, not in a service establishment bylaw. And the reason I say this is because the service establishment bylaw, the way it's currently written, does not strike the service. It just gets rid of taxation. So effectively what you have is a zombie service. You have a service that exists, but it levies no taxation, so it can't really do anything. That's not a position that the regional district should put itself in. Place the authority to trigger the public consultation in the committee bylaw so that the conversations, as Director Jackman mentioned, the conversations around what community consultation are gonna look like, the format, the schedules, all those pieces are available in the public eye and in the minutes of that committee, so that anybody interested in this can then engage that way. The way it's structured right now does not allow for that. So I think there are improvements there. I think staff are certainly taking steps to do that. When would that review happen? The directors have the authority to look at services at any given point in time. So I think it's inappropriate to put this in a service establishment bylaw, a 10-year piece, because you're at that point, you are constraining yourself. Leave yourself the authority to look at a service anytime you want to look at a service. And that, again, should be in a committee bylaw, not in a service establishment bylaw. Does that address your question?
Supplemental.
Yes, please.
So I like the 10-year review. I like it in the bylaw. The residents I've talked to, all 100% that I've talked to so far want that 10-year review in the bylaw and kept in the bylaw. That's been my experience with the residents I've had consultation with. And supplemental question regarding the budget. What I also see is sort of missing here is the split in the revenue that is like these. The balances, from the different areas, it's missing. The numbers, okay, Gary knows what these are called, but we don't see in this budget, like what area E has contributed, what area D. I would like to see that, so the residents can see it for transparency. And that's about it for now.
Yes.
Respectfully through the chair, as director, we're all equal. We can always provide that information. We can always provide that information to the public. I think where we really put that information forward is at the time of budget development. When we're doing our rounds in the community, when we're talking about the establishment of services, we should definitely be breaking that out. The format, there's always room to fix this document or change it, improve it, and it's gone through subsequent rounds as a financial plan. If you'd like to see that information, I'm sure it can be arranged for in the future.
Thank you. Director Papa, instead of Mr. Papa.
Thank you, Chair. I do have some concerns. We had in area H, a little bit different than the other areas that initially joined the bylaw. We joined a couple of years ago. And we did a lot of public consultation. We had public meetings throughout Spokane Valley, and then we did a referendum. So from my perspective is, am I going to be included in a possible review again and spend, it cost us around $30,000 with the referendum and the public consultation, et cetera. That's a lot of money to be spent on that. We've done that. But I also agree with Director Graham that there should be a review, whether it's the bylaw or the committee policy that we have, within a certain amount of time. I don't know whether 10 years is appropriate or 5 years, and that can be decided in committee when we review it. And the other concern I have is, I'm not the only one that's been brought into the service here a couple of years ago. There's area that's been brought into the service. And I know some of the municipalities are considering it being brought into the service. So do we review each area when they get brought into the service, or do we have one harmonized here? There's a lot of questions that are not answered. So I would support this motion, but to be reviewed in the year. And just what Director Gray mentioned is, let's extend it because our time expires here in October. We either extend it or not, or followed by the board. So I would agree with an extension for 1 year until we had a time to meet with the committee and make some decisions on how we're going to answer the questions that I've posed and the questions that Director Green posed.
Thank you. Director, do you have anything? Nothing? Director Pig, yes?
Respectfully through the chair, just one quick clarification around this. Regards to the committee piece, it's established by bylaw. So the review would be the requirements for review would be set, firmly. It's not a policy matter. So it's sort of like one level up in regards to the requirement to actually do that. So it's just, we're not reducing the requirement. We're just moving where the requirement would be. That's what's trying to be.
The supplemental, get for the answer I was provided. So if we adopt the bylaw as presented in our minutes today, we can still in committee request a review within 5 years, within a year, or within within a 2-year period. Okay, that clarifies to me how I vote on this bylaw.
Director Page.
Yeah, thank you. I'm capturing the nuance of the service bylaw versus the committee bylaw. My first question, we've had a conversation around governance and having, is this something we can work into, say, community services in the individual subregions? I'm a little concerned about one more committee. I'm in support of finding a place for this service to have discussions where they're exposed to the public and there's public time and input and we can do these reviews, but I am a little concerned about yet one more committee and the administrative and bureaucratic work that goes into forming that. So that's my first question.
Who would like to take that one?
I can try to speak to it through the chair. The purpose of the committee bylaw is to establish that committee for the local conservation fund to have those discussions. And yes, it would be open to the public. And what I'm hearing from you is instead of having another committee, you would prefer
I
this
would be curious,
discussion.
yeah, can they live in another, can it live in
And
some other
another
structures?
committee. It's something that we can discuss. And as staff kind of think about it, I'm not sure if I have an answer for you right now.
Just because I know we've already given staff some direction to talk about governance and look at some of these ways we can.
We can look into it.
Yeah, okay. The second second comment I would have is, I know we have a lot of priorities. I'm a little hesitant to put a 1-year marker on this particular item because I know that's just gonna move it up on the list and create a pressure within, and it might be better if it takes 1.5 or 2 years. The city of Nelson is looking at what it would take to join this particular service, which is going to certainly, and already has started to begin conversations around the admin fee and how much those costs are associated and what makes sense for our view. So I know that review and looking at this bylaw is still on the table for the near term regardless. So I just wanted to put that out there that it's not like this will go away, but I just wanted to share those comments about how many meetings we create.
Okay, thank you. Director McFadden.
Thank you. Through
Oh,
the.
sorry, can I hold you? I'm trying to read his writing.
No,
Director Newell. Director Newell, would you like to speak?
Thank you. Through the chair to Tom Dewell, what is a review? Like, I heard you say we can do it any time. So like, what would a review be? We got a formal 10-year review. We're going to review. What's the criteria? What do we review? I don't quite understand what we're talking about. Other than just simply a thing where we take a look at it and say something. Anyway, I don't understand what a review is, the criteria. I don't understand it. Maybe Tom can help me through the chair.
Okay.
Respectfully through the chair, I think you just summarized my question about the current bylaw, right? Because the current bylaw doesn't say anything about review. What it actually says is the taxation expires. That's it. It doesn't say there's going to be a review, which is sort of the argument that I placed in the report. Now, what the board has expressed, or the members of the board have expressed, is the interest in doing a review. And my comment or my recommendation in this regard is that that conversation belongs with a committee bylaw, so that participants of the service can then look at the service and say, what are the requirements to evaluate where's the equity in the service? What are we receiving from the service? Do our contributions to the service make sense? Are the projects being completed by the service aligned with the values of the regional district? I would say that those are, 3 or 4 key components that in evaluating a service you would want to look at. But again, under the current bylaw, it makes no provision for that. It just says the taxation expires, that's it. I would encourage the board to consider the idea of a committee bylaw or a venue in which you could place those sort of pieces in play when evaluating what you're receiving for your tax dollars.
Thank you. And Cindy would like to speak.
So through the chair, when this local conservation fund was established first in the East Kootenays, because it was the first of its kind, that 10-year clause was added in. After 10 years, the East Kootenay Regional District removed that clause, and it no longer requires a review because it's been successful there. In the interim, we also adopted it. We had pulled that 10-year review piece into our bylaw. And with this conversation that's just now come up, we've had a conversation with the local, Kootenay Conservation Program, who delivers this program on our behalf. And there is opportunity to consider options for review, working with the Kootenay Conservation Program. And we will, once the committee is established, and I was advised that the terms of reference that we currently have for the local conservation fund is quite robust and could actually be cut and paste into a committee bylaw. So that will be the premise by which we will start the discussion at that committee level on what a review looks like. So we can establish that in the bylaw going forward, if that's what the board chooses to do on an ongoing basis.
Director Newell, did you have a supplementary?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So my observation, not having been part of the committee, in quote marks, the directors and staff and the Conservation Fund had on an annual basis, if not more often, been very rigorous in analyzing the projects, the purpose, the intention, the leverage. In other words, all aspects of what might be considered a review on an very regular basis. So if we want to formalize that, me now being, or Area F now being part of it, sure, let's formalize it. But I want to be clear that I fully support the recommendation that's been presented, and that the directors will use their discretion to ensure that the projects are valuable as originally intended. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Director McFadden.
Great. So I'm wrestling with what to do with this, and I'll tell you why. I agree with you, Tom, Mr. Newell, sorry. With your perspective on, yes, where it should land and how it should be done and process-wise. What I wrestle with is I'm hearing from the people who are paying into this service, which is not me, which is why I'm trying to understand where the people who are paying into this, where they land, because that will impact how I vote, is that there's a split from some who are very happy with the service and some who are not. Without putting a limitation on the timeline of how long we're extending the bylaw is, we have no assurance for Director Graham and her residents that it's actually going to come back to a committee level and have a review. Because there's no constraints there to do that. We're basically saying we're removing the stipulations here and we're opening it up to just staying there without an actual motion with the timeline that says we know you're going to come back and actually fix some of this problem of there needs to be some insight into or some direction from the directors that are part of the service wanting to understand more about that. So without putting a limitation of we're just extending it for a year and a half. And I take your point, Director Page, but my concern is that because there's so much going on and there's been some key things that I would really like for us to have discussions on the governance side, but doesn't necessarily have to discuss like the tax side that still haven't got before us that I've been saying are going to come before us. And so how do we make sure that it doesn't go 5 years from now and we haven't actually got back because staff has too much on their plate without putting a timeline on this motion? How do we make sure that it does move up? Because it probably does need to move up when you're talking about an actual parcel tax and taxation on people's properties. We need to know if it's hitting the mark or not. And so, yeah, I'm just throwing my thoughts out because maybe someone has some clarity. Because as of right now, I don't know how I vote yes without knowing all the participants are comfortable and that there is a timeline on making sure that that's coming back to them, that they're feeling comfortable with what their residents are being taxed. Just thoughts. Maybe someone has answers for me,
Okay.
but.
First of all, I have Angela that would like to speak.
Through the chair, the board has directed staff to prepare a local conservation fund committee.
So that bylaw is coming forward at some point. So we already have direction to put forward a committee bylaw. And so as Thomas said, if we're putting language in the bylaw in regards to the review, that would be part of that process.
A timeline, do you have a timeline on that? Because again, there's a lot of things I've noticed we put forward, sorry, supplemental for the chair. And this isn't a slight on staff at all, because I recognize how much we put on your plate. So it's how do we make sure that there is a timeline on when that is coming forward and it doesn't end up taking 4 or 5 years to get that bylaw done because there's other things. So that's just my concern, hearing Director Graham's concerns. That's my concern, is how do I make sure that that is gonna have a timeline? Now, if you're saying, yes, we have a timeline for that, we know what's gonna come before you, then I would feel more at ease about this, if that makes sense.
Okay, so we have Stuart that would like to speak also, and then Sangina, and then we will move on.
Thanks. Through the chair, I think it's important to note, just to address Director McFadden's concerns, is that the committee bylaw can include pretty much anything that the directors wish to include. It could include something that says you have to do a review every 5 years. It could include something that says you have to do a review every 10 years. But based on what I'm hearing around the table, it sounds like if we're going to establish a committee, which to Director Page's question would be very difficult, I think, to try to lump this in to any other business other than maybe rural affairs, which might really bog down one of those meetings a couple of times a year just because of the business associated with this service. But that being said, one of the ways around this could be every 3 years or every 4 years, the committee's mandated to have an item on their agenda that considers the review of the service. And that forces the discussion in an open meeting. The public's able to see that the committee's considering that, and they can provide feedback to their director to say, yes, I would like you to look at a review on this service. I would like you to go to the public to see if they still see value in it and allow those questions to be asked. It doesn't mandate the review take place, but it mandates the committee actually consider it and debate it. So there's ways around that with the committee bylaw to be able to make sure that it's considered, yet not forcing the cost to be applied to the service to go through a review that the public may not want.
Thank you. And Sangina?
Yes, so through the chair, just to speak to that timeline issue, we are working with a contractor, the Kootenay Conservation Program. And in 2016, they did a survey of the whole regional district to determine what areas were interested in expanding or adopting the fund. And so we have already started preliminary conversations with them. I think with them attending our committee meeting, we can come up with a timeline and try to address this issue as soon as we can with their support.
Okay, so we have quite a speakers list. I'm just gonna say who it is. For the first time, DeBoon, McCarran Cole, Vandenberg, Lund, and then we're gonna start on the second speakers list, and May on the first. So, Director DeBoon.
So I think I know, but it's not written anywhere. Conservation is a broad term. What exactly are we paying for? Because it's not written anywhere.
Thank you.
So through the chair, areas A, D, E, F, and H now belong to this service, and there's interest by other electoral areas as well as municipalities. And it's a $15 parcel tax that you pay once a year for local conservation projects. The Kootenay Conservation Program has extensive information on their website. The service has a technical review committee of local scientists that help to evaluate the applications and then make a recommendation to the board, which then the board decides whether or not. So that $15 is basically applied to local conservation efforts in those electoral areas.
And I know all that, but I have no examples of what is delivered by the local conservation programs.
So through the chair, they support delivery of this program. So staff manage the budget, they manage the technical review committee, they manage the intake of applications, review of applications, submitting reports to us on whether or not that that proposal is viable and whether or not the outcome of that proposal meets the terms of reference that was established for that project to.
It's still not an answer.
So-
What is
so just-
delivered by the program? And what, give me an example of what, when you pay something, what do you get back? I have no examples of that here.
Respectfully through the chair, a number of the projects involve wetland conservation, particularly recovery of wetlands. I think there's been some out by Sunshine Bay, there's been some in the Slocan Valley. Stream Keepers has also accessed money in the past, I believe, for some river restoration work. I think possibly they're talking about Slocan River, definitely Salmo, that project.
Go ahead. Yeah, through the chair. Sorry, I didn't understand your question. There's been lots of work done, as Tom mentioned some of it. The projects are usually related, like we had a frog habitat restoration project. There's a program up in delivered by an individual out and an organization up in Caslow for bear fencing and bear awareness. So and white nose syndrome, bat habitat, and restoration of other habitats in our region that has actually been quite successful. I can speak to some of those projects, what we've approved, but I think it's best, Kootenay Conservation Program is gonna come here and give a delegation to the board. I think it's in November, and you will hear from them specifics around some of those projects that this funding has been delivering in our region.
I appreciate that. That's what I wanted to know. And if they come with the delegation and inform us what they're doing, very helpful. But there's nothing in the report to guide me to say, wow, this is a great thing to spend money on. And so there are parts missing here that we're sitting around the table, not knowing. Our municipality contributes to stuff too. I know what they're doing, but when I sit here and read a report that doesn't tell me that, I don't find it helpful.
So just before we go on, I just want to make sure that is something that is missing in the report. Is this funding that's brought in, and correct me staff if I'm wrong on it, this funding that's brought in and where the general administration part comes, is this group decides on programs that other people apply for in those areas?
Yes, through the chair, the participants in the service decide
Right,
where the funding
Yeah.
goes.
okay. McLaren Cole.
Thank you, Chair. And I don't want to belabor this, but I appreciate the conversation because it's helped me understand, even though the cost is not part of this service, but I have a couple questions for people who are, say, longer in the tooth than I am. In 2014, how was this presented to, because this was agreed to by a referendum in each of these areas, and how was it presented? Was it in 10 years this will end? Or in 10 years this will be reviewed for extension or so on?
I'm gonna go to Stuart because he wanted to speak and I didn't see that before I went to you. So he might be able to speak to that. And if not, then I will go hopefully to somebody that was there 10 years ago. Go ahead, Stuart.
Thank you. So through the chair, just to start with Director McLaren-Coe's question, that is actually a matter of a little bit of confusion. I think it depends on who you speak to as to how that was presented in some of the public meetings. Definitely the 10-year timeline was there. What would happen at that 10-year timeline is something that people are a little bit confused about because we did not put that specifically in any documentation. So anything would have been through presentations at various public meetings. That being said, I do think that the comments we've been receiving from the public definitely speak to the desire to have a review of the service. And I do think that the participating directors are very much listening to that based on the discussions that they've had. I do also want to comment on the report that's in front of you with respect to the bylaw, because I think what's happening is that there seems to be an expectation there should be more information to determine this amendment. And I'm not sure that's the case. I think that based on the questions from the public, there might be some expectation from directors around the table that you should have more information in front of you because you're determining whether or not the service lives or dies. And that's not the question that's in front of you right now. It's really about removing that 10-year clause to allow flexibility, partly because we've got staggered joining with Area F and Area H joining recently, but also to provide that committee with more control over when those reviews occur. When that review occurs, that's when we'll be able to present to the public the history of the projects that have been provided, more detail on the budget, more detail on the amounts that go to the conservation fund. I understand there's been some confusion around some of the budget for 23 and 24, which we can speak to today, or we can speak to during the public process and answer those questions. So I just want to make sure that the information that's in front of you is really just around that legislative requirement and what Tom's brought forward around that 10-year provision, and not necessarily making a call as to whether or not the service continues, particularly for A, D, and E.
And Tom would like to also speak on.
Respectfully through the chair, yeah, the scope of tasks assigned to me was quite narrow. The 10-year piece, right? And while I appreciate the questions around what the service does, that is an evaluation of the service, not an evaluation of the 10-year criteria. They are two distinct pieces, and as Stuart mentioned, we can serve the board well to have those conversations in separate spaces.
Okay, thank you. Director Vandenberg.
Thank you through the chair. So initially, as Director McFadden pointed out, the amount of information, this doesn't affect Area C directly as yet. And so it's a matter of understanding the information is adequate for this. This is a bylaw that is set to go on into perpetuity. Director DeBoon asked exactly those questions that I had, and that is what have been the outcome and successes of it. Now I understand it's Kootenay Conservation Program. And I guess my only question at this point is this tax then the sole funder of the Kootenay Conservation Program, who have 4 board members and 9 team members? Would be my question. And to the point about having them come and present to us, I would really welcome what type of work they've been doing and get the results of this tax and its return on value.
Okay, and Sangeeta would like to.
Yeah, so through the chair, since the first local conservation fund was created in the East Kootenay, I believe the Kootenay Conservation Program, working with other regional districts and municipalities, has expanded that fund to other areas of the province. So it is expanding in other areas where it supports conservation efforts. And I'll let them speak when they come here on how the funding. So they only receive 9% of the taxation for their time to support the fund. So that's how the requisition works, or how we pay for their time to support that fund.
Supplemental.
Thank you for that. On their website, it doesn't list any other partners on it. And to know that 10% of that money is going towards them kind of begs the question, what happens with the rest of it? So, but until they're going to come and make a presentation, I'm not quite sure how I want to support, try to support my colleagues.
And Director Lund.
Hi, sorry, I withdrew.
Sorry, didn't see that. Director May.
Thank you, through the chair. I'm feeling like this discussion is happening kind of backwards and without the feedback of knowing what the program is that we're supporting, who's doing it, how it's governed. And we're making a very high impact, or being asked to make a high impact decision about something that obviously a number of the directors don't know what the service is, what it does, and how it does it. So any review needs to be bi-directional. We have, we look at finance, we look at governance, we look at administration. What we're not looking at here is what's the point of it all. We need to have that presentation before we can actually make the decision that we're being asked to make today, in my estimation. That we're being asked to make what is really a financial decision about something that many of the directors really just don't have familiarity with. And so, my inclination would be to remove that 10-year so that we can have the program continuing to function, maybe, at a reduced rate, an accelerated rate, whatever. We don't want to close down what has been a very valuable part of our communities and our neighborhoods in our region because we don't understand fully. So I would support removing the 10-year clause so that it can continue and we can make some deliberations with fuller information from what the service delivers. And then we can make some efficiency decisions, we can make some governance decisions, and we can make some intention decisions after we have learned more about the service. Thank you.
Thank you, and Angela.
Yes, through the chair. So I just want to connect the dots because it was at the beginning of 2024. But the the Kootenay Conservation Program does present to us as a delegation in January and provides us with an update of what happened in 2023. Then I believe it was February of this year, we actually looked at the programs that they were going to fund for 2024. So that's the connection, is that the local conservation fund is brought to this table, but it was at the beginning of the year. So I feel like it might not be on the top of everyone's minds. When did we see this? How do we, when do we approve this funding? And that all happened at the beginning of 2024. So
Thank you for connecting.
yeah, no problem.
Thank you. Yeah, January was so far away. Okay, so we still have, I'm pretty sure that we've just about got everybody for a first time. Weatherhead, then Cunningham, and then we're gonna start on the second list.
Thank you, through the chair. Mine was just based on the discussion around the committee. Conservation seems to fit the CSLAC committee, in my opinion. And it would give us some room to have broader discussion on this. If that was I just wondered if it was a good fit. Maybe staff has a different take on that.
Do you have a take on
No, through the chair, that's a good suggestion.
that? Okay, thank you. Director Cunningham.
Thank you. As somebody who doesn't participate, but was interested in participating, I looked at the whole thing thoroughly. And it is in fact, as mentioned, yes, we hear about what they do every year. And we also get a chance to decide how much money they're going to get every year. And we looked at their budgets and the projects and I'm not a member and I know way more. The thing is, of course, we talk about putting it in another committee. Well, I can see that, but would that mean that people who don't have an interest in this thing and are not contributing are going to have a chance to talk about it and perhaps change decision? Usually, like most of our services, we talk about the services and we control the services that are ours. And other than I realize, of course, under the rules, we all talk about the finances and everybody gets to vote on the budget. But in fact, the budget should be controlled by the people who participate, in my opinion. Thank you.
Okay. So we're gonna go back to a second round, and I'm just gonna, because it's kind of all over. I have Graham, Jackman, Newell, Page, Papa, and Vanderberg.
Thank you. So through the chair, so in my discussions with area residents, this 10-year was not. Their view is that it was not a mistake. It was not a pull-in from the East Kootenay. It was the trigger, and this is what we were told in the public meetings, that we would get a 10-year review. So to my mind, this is the trigger that should be making the review for A, E, and D. With regards to the new areas that have come on, that wasn't decided in 2014 because we didn't know that there was going to be other participations, and that's something that have to be dealt with. But right now, Area E residents are opposed to removing the 10-year, whatever it is in the bylaw. They're opposed to that. They want to keep it. They want a review. They want it now. And they are willing, in my conversations, to pay one more year so that we give the staff time. They're $15, everybody's been paying, we've been paying it for 10 years. If we were gonna do all of this bylaw and stuff, like, we've had 10 years to do it and we didn't. Which is not that staff didn't have time or we didn't know that, like, I certainly didn't know this was gonna come up again. I remembered it was a review. And in our discussions with the directors, the review would be a mail out to all of the residents who are paying into this, and also an internet survey. And then we could ascertain, show them, here's all the projects, here's the money that's been spent. What do you think? Like, we need to know, because this was a brand new tax in 2014. And so all I have now is what I've been talking to with my residents, and they are standing firm that they have been paying for 10 years, and we're not discounting the work that's been done. There's been lots of good work that's been done, but they want their opportunity that was promised to them in the public meetings, which I recall. I recall being there, and I recall being in a booth right next to the fellow, I can't remember his name, in Castle, and we were talking about it. And he was telling me, you know, it's for 10 years, we're gonna review it in 10 years and we'll see what's been done. So I just feel that we need to do what we say when we say to the residents. And this 10-year review in the bylaw was for that purpose. And that is our recollection, and that's where I stand for Area E on this matter.
Okay, we still don't have, because I wasn't gonna allow anybody on first reading, but we still don't have a motion. So I'm going to give every second speaker the chance if they want to put a motion forward.
About 2.5 minutes, you're gonna hear the recommendation. Director Graham is completely correct, and I care and I don't care what East Kootenay did, because I know what we did. I was there every step of the way. I was there before the steps, because I talked to the directors in East Kootenay, who I knew very well, who were in support of this and sort of as is formulated. East Kootenay did something, we promised something. Stuart is 100% correct, because I went back, I still have the brochures and the posters, none of the written stuff I have that was put out said 10 years. That wasn't it. I went back through my files. It's not there. But it was clearly discussed. The expectation that this is a voluntary tax and you're gonna have a chance to revisit it as public. That didn't say it would be canceled. And that's a big gray area. But we're in a bit of a box right now. I'm gonna jump to that in a second. Didn't say it'd be canceled, but it also, what I'm hearing now, is if a cluster of Area A residents say something needs to stop, that is disingenuous to A, D, F, and H. We're in a box where people just voted to keep something going or to start something. So we're not gonna stop it. And the expert advice that I do appreciate, because I know how carefully some of our staff review these things, we have the wrong words in the wrong place. So let's take the words that are incorrect out of there. I hear Director McFadden very clearly, and I expect in October, if staff doesn't have a clear report on this by agenda prep, I'm gonna have a motion to revisit that direction of staff and put a date on that committee establishment. We make our best decisions with clear focused committees. And then we don't have an hour of talking about it at board. Because the people, as Director Cunningham said, who have invested and their constituents have invested, were committed to a service, have their say. They have a focus meeting where they can come online, they can tell us what they like or don't like, or they can tell us in the parking lot as they always do. So that is the strength of a dedicated committee. Pretty quick, this is gonna be $250,000 a year. This is no small taxation. And there's indication of growing it. So I'm 100% for dedicated committee at this point, because it's gone way too long, it's scattered. And I'm 100% for correcting what technical constraints we put on ourselves. It's a 10-year, it's in front of me again, I just switched screens. It doesn't say the service ends, as Tom said. This service continues. We can still say we're gonna do something else and tax something else. But my understanding is if we don't put a notice somewhere down in Victoria really soon, like into this month, then the province won't put this on as a parcel tax. Because this is unique. This isn't like the other requisitions where we say we want to collect $297,000 for economic development and whatever. And then the province works that out sometime in April to figure that out. This isn't that, this is different. So I will move third reading of this bylaw, 2959. And, hope we can solve this piece. I move third reading. By
Okay,
comment.
and Director Main was seconding. So, do you want, the third person I have is Director Newell. Do you want to speak to the motion on the floor?
No, it's moved and seconded and I won't even call the question. I'll just pass.
Okay, Director Page, do you want to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I had one question. Hearing McFadden, is it possible after this motion, but I'm also hearing Jackman, that we could contemplate a motion that puts a timeline on the bylaw review for by this time next year? That's not part of this reading. I think that addresses the timeline, takes the language out of the bylaw. And then the question I had for staff is in contemplation of a committee, because this is ongoing work and we have this technical committee and they do, as Angela pointed out, I'd seen them so many times at Nelson, I've seen them here, and I've seen them as part of referendum. And I knew they'd come somewhere in the budget telling us all the projects of the bat conservation and the mussels and the pollinators. It's a couple list in front of me. Do our committees have to meet yearly? Is it possible to contemplate that we get all of those meetings and presentations like we do now, but then every 1, 2 to 3 years, a committee comes together to look at what the service is doing as a whole, as opposed to it being an ongoing yearly thing that we just add to our annual calendar? Because it isn't an operational thing we run. The conservation program is a separate body that is running this program. So I question if we can have this, if we're doing a committee that doesn't have to meet annually.
And we are.
So through the chair, the technical review committee provides the recommendations, but in order to put this into the budget, we would need to get approval from the participants in the service. So that's why we meet with them yearly.
Yeah.
And it's only one meeting a year that we sit down and go over the proposals with the Kootenay Conservation Program.
Okay.
Thank you.
And that's for budgets.
Director Popoff, on the motion?
On the motion, this will determine how I vote on that motion.
Sorry, Director Davidoff has a point of order.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I just saw that. Director Davidoff?
Yes, I have stayed away from this conversation intentionally because Area I doesn't have any parcel tax services that we participate in. And we're not a partner in this. So the point of order is who gets to vote on this?
I think it's all vote because it's financial.
Well,
It's by bylaw.
Or it's bylaw, sorry, it's bylaw. So it's all vote. Okay? So Director Popoff.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a question, and the answer to the question will depend on how I vote on this. I want to make sure that I understand this correctly. Is if we approve this bylaw, it continues on. Or if we do the third reading, it continues on. We met the timeline that's there, that's regulated by the province. Now, my understanding is we've given direction to the board to establish a committee of the participants of this service. And in committee, we had some discussions that we were going to go back to public consultation in the initial areas that were established. And there was no need to go back in area H and possibly area F because we've done our public consultation. And in area H, for everybody's information, it was approved by 67% of the people that voted. So it was a substantial approval of continuing with this bylaw. Then when we have our subcommittee or a committee, we will decide when the review is going to take place for the other areas. And my understanding was it was going to be soon, like within a year.
Who would like to take that one? Staff and John.
So through the chair, right now we're in the development of that committee bylaw. And staff will prepare the language. And then from there, we're going to provide it to the directors of that service to provide us with some feedback prior to bringing it to the board. So there's going to be the opportunity to have a discussion of what that looks like, when to have the review. Does everyone have to review at the same time? You know, those discussions will be had, and we can include that language into the bylaw. But right now, that's still very preliminary. There's, you know, the meeting I think just happened September 3rd in regards to the area directors. We know what the intentions are. We know that they want to have public engagement. The bylaw is already in the making. And so it's now having those conversations with the directors in the service to determine what that's going to look like. For us to say right now what that's going to look like, we don't know, because it will really be based on what the conversation is with the directors of the service.
Supplementary?
Yeah, thank you. You know, I know our workload, as mentioned by the director Page, is substantial. And I would not like to see this bylaw put on the back burner for another 4 or 5 years. You know, and I guess this is maybe an inappropriate question is, can we get this bylaw in place within at least a year or 2?
So through the chair, as of now, I've been directed to prepare the bylaw. We have a draft. Staff is providing their input and we're going forward. Quite often, like when it comes to our committee and commission bylaws and updating them, it's more so based on the direction of staff. So if it's a priority to get it done, you know, right now there's the sub-regional reviews for some of the committees. There is the local conservation fund committee. Those are priorities right now because we want to look at the business and improving the business. Membership with the commission, that might take a little bit longer because that's not a priority to change the membership in a bylaw as it is to help with the business and best practices. So as of now, that is being dealt with. That bylaw is being dealt with by staff.
Okay, so my understanding is it's going to be in the near future, not 5 years down the road. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Vandenberg on the motion?
Yeah, well, it's a process question.
Okay.
And it could be very well in the motion. So, back in 2018, when the first and second readings were done, 2018, July 18, earlier, the first and second reading done. And I think Angela did touch on this. There's an ad further that the staff meet with the participants group to meet and discuss bylaw 2959 and including KPC. So my question is, I think Angela, I think that's what you referred to in September 3rd. Did that occur? Because that was a piece of a condition to the first and second. Before we move to the third, I just want to make sure that that did occur.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Director Cunningham.
Yeah, thank you. A couple of things. The first, of course, I'd like to remind everybody that under the community charter, if you wish to withdraw from the service, you actually had to do that the same way in which you entered it, by referendum or whatever. And if we were talking about a 10-year review, this could be some people, I get the feeling that some people feel that they'd like to withdraw from the service because they don't want to do it anymore. Just to remind them of the process. And the second thing that I'd like to sort of mention is that years ago we had a service called planning, which is now evolved into a multi-thing service. And every year, the way the bylaw was written, the municipalities would have the opportunity to opt in or out for planning for the next year. So that through, you know, the whole planning process in a mess. And sometimes municipalities will only be in if their areas, good stuff for their areas we're in the plans. In other words, if you're going to do my community plan this next year, yeah, I'll stay in it. If you're going to help me with this and this, yes, I'll stay in it. Otherwise, no, I don't want to opt in this year. What a horrible mess that was. So we have to be careful that when we think about a service like this, where there are many areas that are joining in or may join in, that we have to make sure that there's some kind of steadiness and fluidity, you know, the way in which we work together. We have to think about that now. And I certainly, I like the idea of the committee thing, and I certainly will support the bylaw.
Director Graham.
So I'm gonna remain opposed to removing the 10-year requirement from the bylaw because it's clear from my residents that they would support 1 year. And I don't know how to, make that or how that would affect this whole service, but they're willing to pay for 1 more year while a review is conducted by mail and by internet. And, all I can do is represent the people that I've spoken to and wanted a review, they expected a review to happen, and I'm not comfortable that just by removing this 10-year requirement from this bylaw, that is going to happen to their satisfaction, so I cannot support this.
Okay, nobody else wants to speak?
Yeah,
There's a
Chair.
couple- Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Is it in?
Director Davidoff, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I raised the point of order and now I guess I'm part of this vote, so I have to decide how to vote. I can't abstain and I can't do anything else. So the bottom line is that when I see an electoral area asking, I guess, for more time or a review or whatever it is, I know what it feels like to kind of have people try to force something on somebody else, and I don't think it's fair. So I will be voting against the bylaw because this is causing dissension, and an affirmative vote would cause dissension. You have one electoral area for sure that would like to kind of review this and have more opportunity to seek what her constituents' voices are. And it's a big deal. It's a loss of voice issue. And I'm always going to vote against anything that exacerbates loss of voice. So I'm going to vote against this.
Okay, thank you. Director Hanegraaff.
Okay, so I'm new to this. My question is, would voting yes prevent the Director Graham from going back to her constituents through mail and email to see how they're feeling about this? Would anything prevent her from doing?
Through the chair, no, that would be the decision of the committee. The intention is to remove that clause from the establishment bylaw and put it into a committee bylaw. And that would be a decision that the committee makes, and then subsequently we would proceed with taking action as directed by the committee. Angela.
Sorry, through the chair, it's the parcel tax, not the services.
Oh, okay.
Right, so the parcel tax would continue.
Yes.
But the director who has a very particular concern could still go back to her residents and consult.
But by referendum, you can go back to your residents on anything to get removed out of a service. And that's the only way that
No, I
you can do
understand
that.
that
So
part. I just want to make sure that there's nothing in this that would prevent her from doing what she wants to do.
right.
Yeah.
Supplemental for, Director Davidoff, did you want to speak?
I think Stuart wants to speak. He's on the list.
How come he's not coming up? Oh, there he is. Sorry, Stuart. You didn't pop up on us.
No worries. Through the chair, I think it's important to note that committee bylaw is very much doing what Director Graham wishes to do. And I definitely don't want to speak for the directors, particularly one who's not here. But from what I understand, the intention is very much that the 3 originating areas will be talking to the public over the next, I would say over the next year or so, to see where the public sits on this service. And if individual directors get the feeling that the majority of their constituents are not supportive of this service anymore, it would be well within their right to bring a motion to the board to say they're going to referendum and want to be removed from the service. That is not something that is that can happen over the next year. And whether there's a 1 year, 2 year, or 10-year clause or no clause in the bylaw, that's a completely separate issue than the public engagement we're planning on doing here. So to Director Davidoff's point and to Director Hanegraaff's point, it does not prevent Director Graham from doing what she wishes to do. And I do think that the other directors who are part of the origination of the service are intending to do either the same thing or something similar. But again, at the risk of not speaking for them, that's where the feeling is right now.
Okay. Are we all clear as mud? Okay, so I'm gonna call the vote. All in favor? For third reading? And do we have, I just want to make sure that, because I will ask for. And do you see Lund, do you see Newell? No, okay. And any opposed?
Yeah, opposed, recorded, opposed, please.
Recorded?
Yes, please.
And I think, and that, so that passes. So I have Director Graham and Director Davidoff recorded as opposed.
Paisley.
And, oh, sorry, Director Casey, I did not see. How come you're not on the screen? Sorry.
There somewhere. That's okay.
That one's from the.
Yeah, I can't see that screen. These glasses. Okay, so it's carried. So I want to make sure I have the people that are opposed. Director Graham, Director Davidoff, and Director Paisley are opposed to this motion and recorded.
Chair, I move adoption.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in, any discussion on it? We know discussion, sorry, we're adopting, we've spoken about this for so long. All in favor? Opposed?
It's up to Casey, I guess.
The same three opposed?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Recorded,
Okay.
recorded. Opposed.
Recorded. So Graham, Davidoff, and Casey. Okay, we're gonna take 3.5 seconds to go to the bathroom and come back. No, I'm joking. We're gonna take a 10-minute break. It's 10:29. Because I didn't want to go in between that. Go.
But sure, there was only an hour and 6 minutes.
Yes. Everyone, if we can have you sit down, please, so we can carry on.
Bang your gavel.
I did, hard.
Yeah, no, we're there.
It's transparent, not.
It's from,
Yeah.
yeah, it's the.
47-year-old apple tree.
Yeah, it's a heavy.
1990.
I don't use the gavel ever. Like the third degree.
They don't even bring ours out there. Whatever it is.
Okay, so we'll get back into here. We are only on 4.1 and it is 10:41. So I don't think that there's a lot going forward until we get to public time at 11:45. So we'll go into the Crescent Valley Agriculture Advisory Commission.
It's for information.
It's just for information.
411 and 4.
And 412 is for information. Crescent Valley Services Committee for information. Now we'll move on to 4.2.2 West Resource Committee.
Point of order, Chair,
Is the recommendation?
Crescent Valley Services has a recommendation, is it not?
Not, that I have.
It says 4.2 with recommendation, Crescent Valley Services Committee. Only minutes or was there no recommendation?
No, the recommendation is the board to approve the regional.
Okay, no, okay, go ahead.
Go ahead, Angela.
Through the chair, because the CDSD minutes were on the addendum, I guessed that it would have a recommendation and then it did not end up having a recommendation, but it's still just placed on the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
We were 1 week shorter timeline than normal this month.
So we're. Okay, so Director Papa.
And thank you. West Resource Recovery Committee met on September the 11th, and we have a recommendation that the board approve the RDCK extend the goods and services agreement with CJ Industries Incorporated for Burton Edgewood operations and maintenance for a 1-year period commencing September 30th, 2024, and ending on September the 29th, 2025, at the price of $138,659.62. And that the chair and the corporate officer be authorized to sign the necessary documents, and further, that the cost be paid from service S188 West Resource Recovery.
And the second, Director Hanegraaff. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Membership. Director Cunningham, would you like to do this one?
Yes, I'd like to move that the board send a letter to outgoing members, Marissa Kane, thanking her for her service to the Salmo and Area Recreation Commission number 7.
And
Second.
I'll second that, or would you like to say something? No,
No, it's fine. We
Okay.
appreciate the work they've done. Also, Chair, we talked about one member that was left off of it, or members left off of this from the swimming pool committee. Would you wish to add that at this time?
So I'm just gonna say that we had 2 members. Was Joe here? We had 2 members that one resigned in May, and this lady resigned on Monday. It's not anything that is crazy, they just have crazy lives themselves. And his name was it in before?
Through the chair, because Jade was added at the commission meeting on Monday. Those commission minutes haven't been submitted yet, but I think you could amend that resolution to add Jade
Lewis.
Lewis to it.
So we're gonna, if it's good with you, Director Cunningham, admin and add J Lewis, Leus.
Lois, but yes,
Lois?
it's pronounced Lois.
Oh,
Yeah, like
Lois.
Freud, it's an EU pronunciation because he's family
Okay.
from Switzerland originally.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Opposed? No one. Okay, portion of area E.
That the board send a letter outgoing member Ashley Deenstra, alternate, thanking her for her service, to the portion of area E for recreation number 10.
And the second? Director McFadden, any comments?
She moved.
Thanks, Rick. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Rindell,
It's me.
that's you.
It's timely, this advisory meets tomorrow afternoon, so I'll vote, I move the board appoint the following individual to the Randall Water and Drainage Service Community Advisory Committee for a term to end December 31st, 2026, Andrew Cobb.
And Director Graham seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. You're watching. Get that right. Okay, directors' reports.
Move to.
Can we move that to the end? That
That would
sounds
be
great.
after item 10, rural
And-
affairs.
Yeah,
Reorder the agenda.
reorder the agenda second. All in favor? Oh,
Question of
sorry.
the process, this is something we're doing every time, is this going to be addressed? Can we
Yes.
just make this standing? Is this? And
It is in our procedure bylaw is something that we are addressing. The whole, because we do rearrange this all the time, so it is in the procedure bylaw for rearranging. Okay,
We'll comment on, but
yeah, everybody, you make sure that you comment on that, and we don't have a huge 2-hour discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Correspondence, does anybody want to hold either correspondence? Director McFadden?
5.1.
5.1, okay. Would you like to speak?
Yeah, sure. Through the chair, I just would like to make recommendation that we give them a letter of support that they're requesting.
Discussion? Yeah,
Do you want to discuss? Oh, second, okay, go ahead.
I'm encouraged when I see an organization come forward, express their needs and their wants and how they want us to support them. But I think I want to see industry do a little more than just maybe what they say is their view of the world and what they should be doing. I think I want to encourage a strong forest industry because we need forestry to help us with wildland, urban interface, fire issues, whether it's thinning or creating fire breaks or whatever, that we need to work with industry and Forest Enhancement Society, BC, and all local governments to do more than just pull timber off the face of the landscape and create jobs. Because, you know, the letter and the intent seems to be a little bit more around jobs. I want us, if we're gonna send letters of support to say, we have these other values and objectives that we want to see rolled into industry's practices. And we want to see ministry, if they set targets for minimizing waste or residue on the landscape, that we see maybe firmer measures, which started way back with Steve Thompson about salvage. And then maybe we see an amendment to exceptions to salvage, where I've read reports where they say, oh, we can't salvage, it's too late in the year, it would be more harm than good, that kind of stuff. There's so much more than just supporting a position of what we saw from one presentation and we see in one letter. So I hope that when the chair and staff craft this letter of support, that we say part of why we support strong forest industry is because we also as society need their participation in, you know, fuel mitigation, in energy, collection of residual for energy production, in whatever. We need to say more than what's on that page.
Anybody else want to speak on that?
So, through the chair, I just want to read out the recommendation that I had. That the board send a letter of support to the Ministry of Forests regarding the Forestry Works for BC campaign. That's what I have as a resolution right now. And sorry, Director McFadden, did you move that? Yeah, and second. So, yeah, we may have to look at an amendment.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I wouldn't make that amendment. I just don't, without them consulting on what we are putting in there that we're supporting them to do, I'm not willing to put something in there on their behalf. I know for a fact, sitting down with Pleasant Cost specifically and other forestry, they're thinking about all those things, they are doing all those things, all that piece, but I wouldn't be comfortable putting words in there that they haven't requested us to put in there and tying their hands to things that we're not sure that we have the right language. So I would prefer to keep it exactly what they're asking for and leaving it at that. If we want to do advocacy work on other levels and advocate that these our forestry organizations are important for all those things, I agree. I just wouldn't want to muddy it if they're specifically asking us for one thing, that we keep it that way. So that I wouldn't put anything else in there.
Director Papa?
Oh, sorry, not on this item. I'd like to pull item 5.
Oh, okay. And did you want to speak again on it?
I'm not well enough prepared, as is pointed out, to put the right words. The best I could come up with that there would be at the bottom of the letter, a statement that of course there are many other socioeconomic considerations where we see an ongoing or further conversations required with industry, the province, and community. That our position is not solely that we support what one organization has come up with. If that is too awkward to do, then I can let it go, but I just don't feel right saying that, yeah, these guys said this and that's the position. It is never there's always some more to the story.
Director Page?
I just want to point out, I'm sympathetic to both concerns, but unfortunately more so Jackman's. Just because at the end of the letter, the ask is that we include a discussion on this important topic on your next board agenda and consider joining us communities for sending a letter to provincial representation. And I think the discussion part, if we are to support, brings in the values from that local government perspective, which are additional and might be complementary, but also there might be places where we're pushing, we need to have a bit of push and pull. So I think what's missing here is that discussion to inform what the letter would be as opposed to just picking up the template. So for this one, I think we need some sort of bigger discussion if we're going to form an advocacy position.
Is there a timeline on it? Just that my computer had stopped, so I can't look at it. Timeline. No, but for where they want the letter.
Through the chair,
Yes.
the letter that they presented to us identifies that they're just looking for a letter of support. They also do have a template of the letter on their website that they're looking for us to use.
Yeah, the link is broken.
The link is broken.
Chair, could we refer this item so that we can have an agenda item with staff input and maybe agree on what we would add to it?
I don't, that's up to you guys. I don't see on there that they need it by a certain time to be able to move anything forward. So it's on the table. Is there anybody that wants to refer it, or we will vote on it as we go?
I'm happy to move referral, so we can actually have a discussion about it.
And a second. On referral of the letter
To October?
to October,
Yes, sure.
but not any further, if that's possible. On referral only, which is no debate, all in favor? Opposed? I don't see anybody on here.
No.
It carried to October.
Yeah.
Okay, now we'll go on to the next
Chair,
one.
Chair, can I comment here?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
now that we've had referral, could we have a direction to staff to prepare a draft letter for us to initiate a conversation?
Well, there's.
Go ahead, Angela.
Through the chair, normally we don't include our draft letters on the agenda, just purely because the public and everyone else is seeing it prior to the ministry actually seeing the letter, and if we're still making revisions.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so for 5.2, I have Director Popoff.
Yeah, I would put forward the recommendation that we send a letter of support for bringing the salmon home.
Second.
Okay,
Everybody together.
this first and second debate,
Yeah, I have a comment.
go ahead, Director David.
Yeah, it's very interesting what's happening with the Bringing the Salmon initiative. That we are having different First Nations groups meeting and holding, like, I was invited to participate in a healing ceremony on lands that are that I guess I am honored to live or to represent at this table, but not all First Nations groups participated. So it was really interesting. Like, is this an all-encompassing letter for all the groups that are involved in bringing the salmon home, or just because there was another ceremony in Director Hennegraff's area it was a different group. So I just want to make sure that we include all First Nations groups that are working on the Bringing the Salmon Home initiative. And if this one does, then I'm fine with it. So I see a hand up.
So just before, I'm just gonna have Sangeeta speak on part of your question.
Yes, through the chair, it's 3 First Nations that participate on the Columbia River Treaty, the Tanaka, the Squatnik, and the Sidics, Okanagan.
Okay, so supplemental.
Yes.
So is the Colville Confederated Tribes represented with that group?
So through the chair, they have their own program in the US. And yeah, so that's the answer.
Well, excuse me, Chair, comment if I may.
Yes.
They were the group that were having the healing ceremony on Area I, at the confluence of the Kootenay and Columbia. So that's what I'm saying, is that I think that the letter should say that we support all First Nations that are working on bringing the salmon home. That's what I'm saying, not on behalf of some groups, but all First Nations groups that are working on bringing the salmon home, because there's a huge effort in the States. I mean, it was written up in the Nelson paper and Cascar paper. There were 30, 40 people there, and including whatever. So I'm just saying, I would like to see the letter. I totally support the initiative. We've been working on it in our area, in the Brilliant Head Pond for years. And the key thing is that I just would like to see it include all First Nations that are working on this initiative and not exclude anyone, if that's possible. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Director, where am I? Popoff, did you speak?
Not yet.
Okay, we're gonna go to you.
Yeah,
and then
so
Paige, then me.
I'm looking at the request letter, and it identifies the groups that Manager Sedan mentioned. So to include other groups in that letter, they might not want to be included. So, I really appreciate what Director David mentioned. It should be all inclusive, but they might not want to be included in this letter of support. So my suggestion would be is if they want a letter of support, let them approach the board and we'll consider their letter. So that's my comment on that, but.
Okay, thank you, Director Page.
Yeah, thank you. We discussed this, and you see it in there in the CRT Local Governments Committee. And I reviewed the document they're referencing from July 2022, and specifically the province, the feds, and these 3 Indigenous nations had come to an agreement in the languages here that promise to develop an approach and initiate an implementation of a plan as soon as possible, and within the terms of this renewal, to establish an enduring and sustainable funded Indigenous-led initiative to continue this vital work. And that's what didn't happen. So at this point, they've reached an expiration. they haven't been offered a renewal, and the work to how to sustain this program hasn't happened. So I want to be really sensitive to when First Nations actually lead an initiative and a request like this. I want to add our weight behind asking the province to fulfill its commitment that it made at that time, to make sure that they do and follow through with what they have. And so that's the thrust of what I think our letter should cover, that you haven't completed what you promised. We support that you do that, and let there's additional, like, I talked to the conservation program here, Herb and Nelson, who's part of the Cobalt Confederated Tribes. They have other politics that they're working through, and they will continue to work through that at the provincial level. And I'm not in support of necessarily bringing that into this. This is this request in and of itself, and I would just push that we push the province to follow through on its commitment to this group.
Thank you, Director May.
Yeah, thank you. Director David Alfitz, you make a very good point, except for the fact that this is a letter from a specific group asking for support. And we either support, we either respond to their request or we don't. And if we wish to include other nations, that's a separate issue. This Columbia River Salmon Reintroduction Initiative is who has this MOU with the province and the feds. And so that is the only thing that we really can speak to within this request. So I wouldn't change the wording that they're asking.
Okay, thank you, Director Jackman.
Yeah, thanks. Just this week, I've been able to sit in, and some of people at this table have sat in, I've sat in on 2 briefings, where you can see the unfolding of a much bigger governance structure around this, trans-border. So anybody who wants to do a little catch up, I have it on my list for UBCM, because heaven forbid I should take an evening off on the 17th at 6 p.m. Sign up for the public information session. It will be pretty much what I've heard a couple times. And there you will hear about the transboundary governance structure proposed, the salmon restoration project on both sides, how many organizations are currently already committed. So I agree, this is a specific request. Let's support this to continue with that partner obligation, but it's a bigger picture. So tune in, go to the CRT website. You can sign up for the link for Tuesday evening, 6 p.m.
Okay. I call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, carried. Thank you. We'll move on to 5.3, Living Lakes Canada. So the application was missed. And so they're requesting to we're rescinding that, but to send a letter of support for their application to the program for a partnership under an aquifer vulnerability study. So who would like to speak on it first?
Chair, do we have to move rescinding the first resolution?
Before we talk about the next one? Yeah, we can.
Okay, I'd like to move rescinding the first resolution.
Second.
Okay. First and second, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
I'd like to then move the recommendation as written, that we send a letter of support with the wording that's listed.
And Director Hennegraff seconds it. Discussion on it? Hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Oh, no, Director, okay. Carried. Director David Off, you put your hand up right at the moment I said any opposed, but I don't think you were. Okay, so communications, anything under that? Anybody wanna? Director?
These will come up at UBCM, won't they? Okay.
Yes, they're
There's a
just,
notification for our identification of this one.
yeah, it's just so you guys are aware of it. For information accounts payable, Director Graham?
Yeah, I wanted, through the chair, I just wanted to say to staff that that's a nice job done on the sundry vendors report that we're now seeing included with the accounts payable. So we actually have some information for residents who are questioning what these sundry vendors are. I think that was great. And just one question that jumped out at me was the trim lock properties for $152,861, if anybody knows what that is about.
I'm not. Stuart, would you have any idea? Yeah, but it's on holidays.
Through the chair, I can look it up and have that ready for my open report later in the meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Yes.
If I might, agree, the amount of, the readability, digestibility of this information is improving. There's one, pie chart, I like pie charts. Top 10 vendors by value, and there the amount and the description are both tagged to the pie chart circle. I have to window in to be able to read it. I can't see it from here even with glasses, but there's, I know I'm kind of, but there's other charts where there's like 8 or 10 colors and it's got numbers and I can window in and see that. And then below, you have to put up, down, and try and decide which blue it is. I mean, this is technicality, but it's so much easier on the top 10 vendor chart to see an amount and the name right beside it. If it's possible to just move those tags, the easier we can make it for people to read and see what this is, the better. I think the transparency, all the detail is there. It's just little tweaks I would look for.
Director Page.
If we're giving input on this report, I appreciate what I believe is the expense report here with the director's information. I don't find it appropriate for the staff listed by name with amounts. And I would question whether that could be by department. I know people are doing their jobs and traveling and training and doing all sorts of things, and you can draw some false conclusions by seeing that someone might have had $1,000 of expenses in a quarter. And I don't want to have people's names put to that, or I would challenge that that's appropriate.
So, and Stuart, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it has to be because of Sophie report that it must be, there's expenses must be put on there. And people's names are put on there. So so Stuart, if you want to correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Through the chair, I will have to check as to whether or not on a monthly basis we're required to put every staff expenditure on there. I can tell you by looking at the list that the vast majority of those would be related to safety equipment and reimbursements for that type of expense. But we can double check to Director Page's point as to whether or not it's appropriate to include every one, or whether there's a threshold where we include it at some level.
Okay, thank you. Anybody, I don't see anybody else online. Okay, we'll move on. That's been received. Bylaw 2924, this is Director.
Me again, thank you. I see what work we have from Tom Dool is 2 steps towards correcting what I view as inequitable taxation. It's kind of a long time coming. So this is one of these multi-year moving ahead, but we have old bylaws as a life. And if you try and figure out who's collecting money where and how it's being spent, you'll just see it's not very clear. So I would like to move first recommendation to get us that one major step down the road, that the defined area A medical first responder, East Shore North, service establishment bylaw 2924/2024 be read for a second time.
Director McFadden seconds that. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
And then I'd like to move the second recommendation for direct staff to complete a service case analysis regarding provision of medical first responder services for all of Area A by no later than June 2025.
Director DeBoon, seconds that. All discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Go on to bylaw 2977, Nakusp and Spokane transfer station. Director McLaren.
Maybe the first 3 readings as written.
Any second? Director Popov. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Your second motion,
Move adoption of the same.
second, Director Hanegraaff. Sorry. This is adoption can't, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. New business, 9.1.1. And this is. This is not just the, this is Nelson's on E, F, and G.
Chair, point of order, if I may.
Go ahead.
Yeah, when we're moving recommendations, because we're being recorded, should we not be reading the recommendation out when somebody listens to the recording?
Yeah, it's one thing or another. If you want to read them off, go ahead. Do you want to?
I can move this. I have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand still as a new director here. I fully support this. It was actually one of my ideas was to move this reserve to support this project, but I'm just trying to understand financially how the dots are connected here to move a reserve from S207 to S202 so that we can give a grant to the Nelson Cycling Club. And maybe somebody who knows more about finance could answer that.
So just before, Joe is here also, Stuart, would you like to speak before Joe?
No, through the chair, Joe can take it.
Okay, thank you.
Through the chair, the reason is that part of that grant that's actually being approved actually involves a regional park. And so for the other directors, that could incur some other costs in the long term. So it should, so it's appropriate that they get a chance to have their say on that as well.
Then I would make the motion that the board approve an amendment to the 2024 financial plan from Nelson Samo areas E, F, and G Regional Park Service S202 to the grant and transfer from and in the amount of $21,403 for the Nelson Cycling Club enhancing the trail project, and further that the board approve an amendment to the 2024 financial plan from recreation area defined areas E and F, service S207 to the contribution from reserve and transfer to accounts in the amount of $21,403 for the Nelson Cycling Club enhancing the trail project.
Second.
Okay, so now I have a first and second, Director Page. I've got a speakers list. Okay, Director Jackson.
Thanks. So the way I see this, and something I never noticed, we have what seems like maybe a zombie service, S207, had no intention to tax in 2023, 2024. It did earn $686 in 2023, which I presume is interest on a reserve balance of some $20,700. Now you have $21,000 in reserve, dormant, not going anywhere, not acting. You're going to drain that entirely, move it to the active service with all the participants. So the question is, will S207 be removed from our books formally? Like this, that shouldn't sit there forever with a zero. So is that a future step? And will there be direction of staff to do that?
That's not something that, it's a good question, because it's something that I want to ask too.
Through the chair, just because a service doesn't tax doesn't mean that you would rescind the service, but that would be up to the participating directors to make that recommendation to the board.
Director Vandenberg.
Yeah, it's just a question on clarity. Is this at all related to our presentation earlier today with Kootenay Cycling Coalition? Is it a completely different thing. Thank you.
Anybody else want to speak? Director Page?
I would be curious if either of the directors in this service had comment on Director Jackman's thing that he pointed out.
Director Grant?
Thank you through the chair. This is a dormant service, and I do agree that having a page in a financial statement is kind of not needed, considering this was like an old service from the Morning Mountain Ski Hill that I don't know how many years ago it's been gone, so it's been a carry forward, and that was, I think, part of our intention by draining the reserve was to just hopefully close this page and move on.
Director Newell didn't have anything? No. Okay, so because I'm in this service, I'm gonna speak also to it. Something that is disturbing to me is it's something that is coming to a main service that has not been discussed at the main service. So yes, I appreciate that money is coming, but then the main service has to maintain the work that is happening in the parks that this work is happening at. So saying no to the money is kind of a crazy idea. But we're saying yes, that we're gonna take on this maintenance without actually having it at our commission table or committee table to have that discussion wholly with the five, like how is this going to be maintained? How is this going to be funded going forward? So if Joe, you can give any insight to that?
Yeah, so through the chair, Nelson Second Club has been a very good partner at Morning Mountain. Most of this work is not actually within the park, but it connects to the park. So the assumption is that it should not add anything to the service, but in anything where we're working with a volunteer group, in 10 years, 5 years, that could change. So that's just the reason for bringing it to the service. There's nothing to suggest that it will change, but as we know with volunteer groups in over time, sometimes those relationships change, sometimes their membership changes, those kinds of things do happen. So it's just to make sure that all of the decision makers are aware of that.
Right. So just before supplemental to myself is that what this Nelson Cycling has come to our group to ask for more money already outside of this stuff. So that's where I'm coming from as a committee. Is my question then to staff is if this doesn't happen today, is it going to affect any work this fall?
Through the chair, yes.
Okay. That's all I need. Director Cunningham, you had your hand.
Yeah, when we talked about the Morning Mountain thing, for those of you who remember, there used to be a ski hill on Mount Morning Mountain and a ski hill in the lodge also. And when the snow depleted, it made, in fact, you know, with the warming that we were seeing, Morning Mountain was no longer really a viable ski hill. But also at about the same time, as they had a fire at the lodge and the lodge burned down. And the funds that we have were from the insurance on the lodge. And with the idea being that, of course, that whatever replaced it, which in this case was the cycling and all the cross-country cycling and so forth, seemed appropriate, and it was up to the directors at the time to say, yes, we can use that money to help enhance things such as that cycling thing. It could also be, it could also, now it's all gone now, then of course the service terminates, but it could also have been used for other things and may have been over the years.
Anybody else have any comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you. The financial services task force. Would like to do that?
Do you want to read the bill? Sure. Okay, I move that resolution 354/24 B, the allocation of financial services grant funds be amended by changing S222 Arena Castlegar Complex, 59,000 Castlegar Friends of Parks and Trails to S222 Arena Castlegar Complex, 45,000 Castlegar Friends of Parks and Trails.
And
Felt
the
like I
second,
had an extra two in there.
and the second. Director McFadden, any discussion? Director Weatherhead.
Thank you, through the chair. I'd just like to ask a financial service grant about financial services grant, and not about this particular motion, but is it okay to ask a question?
If it's not about this motion, can we hold it until after?
Absolutely, I can ask staff that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any discussion, Director McFadden?
Yeah, this might be a refresher. I read this, reviewed my agenda last 2 days and have no recollection of this coming to us. So can you give us? And then as I was trying to like pull it up, my screen like went small and I couldn't read it. Anyway, so I had notes asking, can you just refresh? Because I'm not sure why we're doing this. And I don't remember having the conversation. We may have, and it's out of my brain.
Yeah, so through the chair, in S222, there is a grant line. And that grant line actually has 3 grants in it. And so it was just that it was a mistake in the FSG to, the entire grant amount is 59,000. The portion that was for the Friends of Parks and Trails is 45,000 of the 59. So the error was just that all of that grant was going to Friends of Parks and Trails, which was not the intent of the budget. There's some other things that I need to bring forward at the next Castlegar District meeting to talk about what that remaining funds are. I think there's actually a carryover of some things that we don't give out anymore.
Great, supplemental. The reason why I was really confused, because we literally just got an email from this group asking to move it to 59,000, and then I read it on here and I was like, what is going on? And so I was very confused. So I think they're coming to delegations.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you for clearing it up.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? And your question, Director Weatherhead.
Oh, just, is it customary to adjust financial service grant amounts throughout the year, or at any time, or would you prefer that if we have a change, we do that at budget time? We actually have a budget change?
Yeah, through the chair. So in this case, it's actually not, it was an error in the original resolution. It wasn't the intent of the budget. So normally, and just correct me wrong, normally these are approved in August. I think it's the August budget. And so those amounts usually correlate exactly to what was approved in the budget process. In this case, that was just an error.
Thank you.
Okay. So move on to 9.2.1, Fire Services, Beasley. That's Director Hill.
I'd like to move the recommendation, Chair, if I may.
You may, and this is all vote weighted, and it is financial to a maximum value of 79,300.
Thank you.
And it's E and F, so Director Graham has seconded. And Director Graham.
Thank you, through the chair. Just a confirmation, I think I know the answer, but I'd like to just have it confirmed that this is actually getting paid for from a community works grant. Is that correct? No, yes.
Yes. AJ, are you online still?
Yes, through the chair, that is correct. It is through Community Works.
Any other questions?
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
Thank you. I'd like to had a conversation with the chief of the Beasley Fire Hall. The massive renovations that we have done at the Beasley Fire Hall this being, I think, the final piece of repaving the area, has contributed to a massive, I think that might have been Monica's term, Chief Spencer's term, but anyway, a large improvement in the quality of activity for our volunteer firefighters. We put a heat pump in, and this summer it was a dramatic improvement to the quality of their work life. We improved the water system. And when I say we're talking about all of the staff that put this entire project together. And it's been massive. It's been a miracle, actually, that we've been able to use Community Works funding for these kind of projects. I just cannot speak highly enough of the work and the improvement. And now we have a fire hall that is significantly updated and modernized and safe. And now we can engage in a asset management plan from really starting at square one and not playing catch up. So AJ, thanks for everything. Monica, thanks for everything, and all the staff involved in this. Yes, I'll end with that note. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. I keep looking up at this TV screen thinking, oh, those three men have not moved. It's because it's been frozen for an hour or so. Because they move on my screen, but they don't move up there. So just unfortunately, there's nothing you can do right now, but if at lunchtime or something. We'll move on to grants, discretionary grants. Who would like to move? Director Weatherhead?
Move all discretionary grants out of the funds available for the following electoral areas, member municipalities to be approved as designated as listed.
Thank you. And second? Director Main? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And community development, Director Weatherhead?
Again, I would like to community development grants out of the funds available for the following electoral areas, member municipalities to be approved as designated the list.
And second, Director Hennegraff. So I just want to make sure that, because the statement is from 200 to 2,000, that's correct?
That's correct, thank you.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Move on to 9.3.2.2. Go ahead, Director.
I'll move this recommendation. Just prior to that is explanation. We've been working under an economic action partnership, and apparently we put that name down instead of the actual contracted service provider, Kootenay Funding Services. So I moved resolution 23724, in the allocation of community development grant funds to be amended as listed.
And second, somebody, Director with Vandergriff. Oh, sorry. Sure. All in favor? Any opposed? Here. Move.
CEO report.
Yeah.
There was a second resolution there.
Oh, there is a second resolution. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead. It's on the back.
So that was a Creston one.
Director DeBoon. Do you want to?
Second resolution.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the resolution 295/24, being the allocation of community development grant funds be amended by changing Preston Valley Kootenay Lake Economic Partnership 2,453 to Preston Kootenay Employment Services 200 and $2,453.
And you
Yes,
second?
yeah, I'll second, and if I could speak.
Yes.
these were different board resolutions because of the timing of, Director DeBoon having to go through council, so that's why they're separate. 3 areas, 1 cluster, town, Kinley.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, now we're,
Chair reports.
so I don't know if doing it.
CEO had to step away, was gonna try and come back for public time. Do you have?
So the only thing that I want to, well, there's a couple of things, is that, well, I think most of us are going to UBCM, next week. And there's gonna be some minister meetings. You're welcome to sit in on RDCK minister meetings. You're not welcome to speak at them. If you want to come into the meeting, you can come 10 minutes early. They're all in the agenda, under eScribe when the meetings are. Our chair will not be there. We have gathered as a couple of us to decide on who's gonna speak at what. What else? I just wanna make a comment about how well our fire services have done, or our EOC has done getting everybody through a disaster that's happened in our region. But I do want to recognize that there were people that lost their homes. So it's not a celebration on our behalf, but it is a recognition of what they went through to get everybody to the point that they're at, but I don't want to forget about those people that have lost their homes. I don't know. I don't think that there was anything else. Was Stuart back?
Haven't seen yet, but maybe that Christine is actively updating the UBC.
Yeah, yeah.
Because we
Keep
just
watching.
received confirmation yesterday morning, 3 of the ministerial meetings. So
I am back, Chair.
Oh, there.
Good.
Okay,
There we go.
perfect. Would you like to speak to anything on a report?
The only thing I want to mention is that just in relation to Director Graham's question around Tremlock Properties, they operate as Right Way Holdings actually, and they do work primarily recently for our Lister water system upgrade.
Okay. We're gonna go on to rural affairs.
we have 12 minutes.
Oh, sorry, I didn't. See you at my part of my eye.
Quick question, and it's regarding UBCM. Is staff looking at alternatives if something happens with the Air Canada strike? Because there could be action on that. They're saying on the news as soon as the weekend. So there are a number of directors who are booked on Air Canada who could be impacted. So just, that was it.
I want to say, and we won't know, but the Tango fleet is not possibly going to be impacted. But, I can take 2 extra people. Be prepared to put your 4 wheels on the ground.
Yeah, it's also my understanding that the jazz is covered by different collective agreement
Yeah.
in Maine and Canada, so they won't be affected.
So,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, we'll go on to rural affairs. Director Jackman?
Okay, so as normal, we received delegations on various items regarding either their land use applications or action being taken regarding their properties. 4 delegations presented information and we're answering questions. The easiest way to do these, I think, is one at a time. I will just run through them all. The first one is all vote, rising from item 7.1, Kokolo, electoral area H, if the corporate officer be directed to file a notice on title on the property as described. For non-compliance with the building code.
Second. Director Papa? All in favor? Opposed?
Oh, yeah,
No,
so
everybody's in favor.
I should.
Carried. Go on.
Change this so that we're. Then, second one, arising from item 7.2, Wingy, electoral area H, again, recommending that the corporate officer be directed to file notice on title on the property as described for those code, non-compliance.
Director Pawpaw, seconds it. Discussion. I just want to, I was at the Rural Affairs yesterday at the meeting, and it was a really good meeting to be at, put it that way. It was really good to hear the input from the people that these are affecting, that the ones that don't go to that rural affair meeting, to actually hear that how much input they get to have, and the directors that are sitting here, how much they listened and how much changed in the recommendations that come forward, that we're supporting residents out there. So I just wanted to say, I really appreciate coming to that meeting. Not that I'm coming to everyone, but it was a good meeting. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Okay, third item on the agenda arising from committee at item 7.3. This is a development variance permit, again, electoral area B. Recommend the board approve the issuance of a development variance permit to Greg and Janice McGinn for property as described. And this is to allow a farm residential footprint with a maximum depth of 151 meters from the front property line versus the 60 meters in the bylaw, and to permit the dwelling with a maximum gross floor area of 323 square meters, whereas the bylaw permits 300 square meters.
Director Tierney seconds that. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
And the delegation wasn't present for that one. There was delegation present for the next one, item 7.4, electoral area J, Hague. I move the board approve the issuance of a development variance permit to Beryl Hague and Lauren Hague for the property as described. It will permit 2 shipping containers, permit a maximum building height of 6.4 meters, and permit a maximum accessory building gross floor area of 183 meters squared. And 801.8, I don't know if we should add to permit a maximum accessory building, just so it's absolutely clear. I'm not sure if it's covered otherwise, 801.8, if it only pertains to accessory building.
I think it only pertains to the accessory building.
Okay, I'll move it as written.
Okay.
Sure.
Director Hannibrow, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Fifth item, also all vote, also had the delegation present for this one, arising from item 7.5. It is land use bylaw amendment, Heartland Mennonite Brotherhood, electoral area C. I move that electoral area C comprehensive land use bylaw amendment 2786, 2024, be the bylaw to amend the club as described, be given first and second reading by content and referred to a public hearing, and further that electoral area C director Kelly Vandenberg be delegated authority to chair the public meeting hearing on behalf of the board.
Second, anyone? I'm not taking your second, your name is in it. So Director Tierney. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Item 7.6, a really interesting food conversation. This is the work plan review, title. Planning Services Work Plan Review. I'm not going to read it. It's set there. The first recommendation is move the board direct staff to prioritize projects as listed as near term in the Services Work Review report dated July 4th, which include as listed. And further, the board direct staff to schedule a second workshop with rural directors to discuss the longer term direction for planning services.
Director Weatherhead, second that. Discussion.
So when this says second workshop with rural directors, absolutely I want to hear staff's opinion on, do we do a bit of an update with rural only, and when do we bring in municipal? Because we can't go too much further down this path without the entire board being there. And so I think, I don't know if we're gonna have 1 or 2 workshops scheduled in the near future. That's what I'm looking for, development services to give us their best ideas.
So through the chair, we'll discuss it as staff, but the intention is to involve the municipalities at some point in the discussion, yeah.
Director May?
Yeah, speaking to the same point, and I urge municipal directors to take some time and just listen in on a rural affairs committee meeting sometime if you can. This planning piece is absolutely going to affect and needs to include municipalities. And, you know, on the same principle that we have the interface on wildfires interface zone, we have a planning interface zone between rural and municipal that we all need to have a voice in. So I really commend the Rural Affairs Committee because you have acknowledged that in all of the discussions going towards this planning piece. So thank you.
I'm gonna speak on this. I'm just wondering, after listening to the discussion yesterday, and I wasn't going to speak at all, and I ended up speaking yesterday just on this item. And there's so much connection with municipalities that my only opinion after listening to yesterday is that it's a wasted workshop by not having us all there right off the beginning. So stuff is not repeated over and over and over again, because that overlapping of what municipalities must do, what regional district may have to do, but may not have to do, is just gonna all be repeated in a second workshop. So that's my only thought on that. Yes. Stephanie, do you?
Or do we need to wait for a staff report?
Or wait for staff. Or wait. Okay. Director McLaren.
Thanks, Chair. Just a question. Is there any value in having senior staff from municipalities attend as opposed to having directors relay that information probably imperfectly?
So through the chair, I would say it would probably be a good suggestion. I think it would directly communicate that information rather than going through the elected officials. And senior staff have a broader sense of what's going on.
Director Vandenberg.
Just a question of clarity with that point, not that I object at all, but then would senior staff of that invitation be participating in the conversation? Therefore, it'll become it'll be staff conversation, perhaps.
I'm gonna take a jab at that one. Is I don't think that they need to have conversation input, but to be able to hear the conversation. They don't need to have, if they have any kind of input to come back, that's when they need to come back to their director and say, this is where, this is where we would maybe go with that or something like that. Because if you did that, it could easily be quickly that this is what staff is saying, and there's not a discussion at that council table. So
Clarity, thank you.
So I do think that for them to hear it directly is good, but not to have that conversation. Did you want to say something?
Yes, through the chair, it's a workshop, so the intention is to discuss rather than to make decisions. Decisions will still come to the board.
Yes.
Further, yes, I understand that, but it's still, if we don't have clarity in the engagement, it could turn into a conversation among staff.
Right.
And then elected officials are observing from the outside.
Yeah. Director Weatherhead.
Thank you. On the topic of a workshop, I think what confuses me is that we as rural directors do not have any input or involvement in municipalities and DEP.
Yeah.
And that's a very different animal as far as I can see. So in our first workshop together, there was a lot covered that we as rural directors had to be absolutely schooled in basically to be able to, but I do understand, at the point of voting down the road. So I'm just wondering how the staff sort of, well, I guess we will have a chance to input on that, won't we? On how we see that, we'll have that opportunity, won't we, to sort of flesh out that discussion prior to making any decisions on workshops.
Okay, just a second. I have Director David off with a point of order.
No, not a.
Oh,
So just
that's later.
To have Cunningham page stated off.
Okay. Thank you, Director Cunningham.
Yes, thank you. I agree. I think it's a rural directors thing. However, that said, senior staff can listen in online. And I have no problem with that. But I really don't want them to participate because it is an elected person. It's for our edification as rural people mainly, and also an edification and a way of working together with the municipal people. But it is as senior staff is, well, come and listen, hear it for yourself, but please don't talk. And that's why we can have them online.
Okay, Director Page, I want us to know that we should be at public time. So because we're 2 minutes into public time, whatever we go into public time, we will be staying for lunch. So, and we have, but we can do that after. Page and then David off.
Thank you. Yeah. I've been pleased to sit on a few rural affairs meetings over the course of a year, and it's super important to hear both sides of that. I see the sense of having a workshop and getting clarity around the direct and operational impacts from a rural perspective is super important. You guys have had the start of some of those conversations when directing the long-term planning for this service, and that makes a lot of sense. There is those planning decisions, that direction has direct impacts around the municipalities and the fringes. Growth has impacts in how our communities interact, and that's super important nuance and conversation. So while I don't anticipate that municipal and rural directors will continually have shared workshops and conversations around this topic, I do think there's a good time either in this workshop or future to bring those two voices together. So as you created a lot of focus and clarity around the rural perspective, when it comes to planning, it's also important to now bring in how does that rural perspective impact the municipal side. And to that point, while it may create a longer conversation, I think you want to hear directly from senior planning staff on the municipal side. These are integrated systems at the end of the day. They have a ton of knowledge. They deal with sometimes a lot of similar items as the planning staff here, but sometimes things that always come up in our domain are not the kinds of processes that are coming up at the regional side. And so I think that's important to give them that freedom and that latitude to hear that advice and expertise when this workshop happens. And I hope we can have that shared conversation a little sooner, because as I was saying the other day, there are approaches in terms of the regional growth analysis and the hazard flood policies, that there's going to be big ideas that we all share across the federation that is the RDCK, and there are going to be specific localized considerations when it comes between rural and municipal. And I think there is a conversation to be had about those bigger principles where everyone's involved, including staff, for all of our education.
Okay, thank you, Director David.
Yeah, I understand that we need to talk to each other. And I appreciate the comments that were made about the discussions at Rural Affairs. Any municipal directors that come to Rural Affairs, we give them freedom of the floor. I cannot remember ever. I got to be careful what I say. Because freedom of the floor at a municipal meeting is something I don't think I've ever been part of unless it was a special thing that we were talking about that was specific where we had voice. But at the end of the day, I think the Rural Affairs Committee members need to meet and have our open, honest discussion and conversation. Then we will take the things that impact municipalities and then we'll meet on everything together that impacts municipalities. But you got to let us have our conversation, because if we have everybody involved, we lose half our speaking time. So let us do our work initially, and then we will invite everybody to come in, senior staff from everywhere else, whatever happens. But please respect that we need to meet and have an honest conversation on how all this stuff impacts us. And we're also doing a lot of work and a lot of reflection on where we go next with our rural electoral area issues and planning and everything. So thank you.
Thank you. Director Jackman.
Oh, thank you. I'm just going to, what did the RCMP say? Follow the money? Okay, so you won't see the regional growth strategy, which is a 5-year horizon now. We were handed by the province $250,000. Local government housing initiatives, we were handed by the province 279,000 and change. And regional growth planning analysis, which is the shorter term, April 10th, 2025, we were gifted by the province $300,000. These just aren't rural things. And 2 out of 3 of those are on this list. So I've never viewed us as being rural and municipal, having that clear line. My struggle is, do we need a little more rural conversation, a little more, so we understand the kind of just rural stuff that we maybe have a little more influence on in terms of zoning and OCP amendments, that kind of stuff. Shake that out a little bit. But then part of the planning staff is working on that other, well, shy of $1 million, but not much, which is all of us. So sooner rather than not later, we need a bigger conversation. It may be more of a board workshop than a rural workshop. And if there's a little shaking out to do before we get there, I'm asking planning staff, and we have a great conversation just to what makes sense to do next, and then what makes sense to do immediately after that. So I don't see this as a long drawn out rural conversation. I see this as a little cleanup, focus of those issues, and they get to the whole book.
Okay, we haven't had any bad humor today. If
No,
you could have that done in 7 days, that would be great. Joking. Director Popoff.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just hearing the discussion here, it's always good to have the municipalities involved in what the rural areas are doing, and I'm glad that you participated in the last session that was there. There are some differences between municipal OCPs and rural OCPs. So it should be a two-way street. The rural directors, like in my area, I've got 3 municipalities. Whatever the municipalities do in their OCP affects the rural area, especially with the lake that's being involved. So there should be a sharing of information. The rural directors should be familiar with the OCPs that the municipalities have, so we can have an overall understanding. We're talking about harmonizing. And, you know, maybe with the bigger municipalities, it might be harder to harmonize, but smaller municipalities that are situated in common areas, it would be great to harmonize with them. So we should have an understanding. So that's something to staff, that when you're considering combining municipal and rural at one meeting, we should have a better understanding of how municipalities work and how their OCPs are structured.
Okay, so that's exactly what I was speaking about, is that as a municipality, when we do our OCP, we must include our rural area. And we did. It took us 5 years, and we did. We had to do that. When it's a rural area, it does not ever include what the municipality has to say. So, so that's where we need to be that partner in that. So Director May.
Yeah, thank you. I don't think any of the municipal directors are saying the rural directors should
No.
not meet without us.
No.
We absolutely respect that you need to have your conversations. And we're saying that that conversation leads to a place where we have overlapping needs, not overlapping jurisdictions, but overlapping needs and desires, and how rural wishes to develop and how municipalities wish to develop need to be, need to recognize each other. There's a symbiosis there, but definitely have your discussions as rural and definitely have the bigger discussion with the municipality.
Okay, I'm calling the question that's on the floor. This is the rural directors, with the list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 things, and the rural directors are gonna meet for a planning service. All in favor? Any opposed?
It's an all vote.
It's an all vote. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay, sorry, we are going to public time. It's 11:57. I said if we're gonna speak longer, we're gonna end up going longer. Do we have anybody? I can't see the screen. Do we have anybody? Go ahead.
Sit down.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Mike Casper. I live in Slocan Park. I just have a comment for the board and a quick question. So I'll go be as quick as I can. About the bike thing that we just heard. There was lots of stuff in the presentation about all these wonderful things. But just would like the board please to consider things like liability insurance, and especially asset management. Because you've been talking about asset management as a board, and all I see in my head is it's not $66 million, it's eventually going to be $100 million. And I don't even think Vancouver could afford that. So I just want to make that comment. So to just really consider maybe asking somebody to put negatives. Like go to Penticton and ask them how their pipeline thing is worked out. I'm sure you'll find out it's not all wonderful and everything's great. So please do that one. But I do actually have a specific question about the reserves.
Okay.
I sat in the budget meetings and we were continually told over and over and over and over again that the reserves can't transfer from one account to another because that would violate something and only municipality could do that. So as much as I think it's awesome what you're doing, and it makes sense, and it's the way it should be, what gives? Either we can do it or we can't do it.
So I don't believe it was an actual reserve. I believe it was a service. If Joe, would you be able to help with that?
I'm just really confused.
Yes.
Yeah, so through the chair.
So service S207 has a defined service area. All of the work that is being done is inside that defined service area. Service S202 is just a mechanism to get that money to the grantee, to the person that's receiving the grant, the Nelson Cycling Club. So it's where reserves can't move is when they're benefiting the wrong area. In this case, it's all within that area.
Okay, so to be clear, during the next budget cycle, you can move money from one reserve to another.
No, sorry.
Same area.
Through the chair, there was no movement of money from a reserve to another reserve. There was movement from the reserve into operations to then give the grant to the group. That is actually what was done. It was not moving a reserve from one service to another. That is not what happened.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Yes, I know it's as clear as mud.
Yeah.
So please come to our next Nelson, Salmo, E, F, and G, because there will be a big discussion on that exact whole thing that happened. So we all can understand.
I'll do that.
Thank you. Somebody else, whoever, you guys just come up.
Chair, directors, public, I've written out my comments and my question, and I have them available
Can you
here
tell
to
us who you are?
distribute. And you can advise me on how to do that after.
Can you tell me who you are in your area?
That's in my presentation.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I'll read as is. So my name is Hal Wright. I'm the oldest living resident of Sandon. Sandon's in the north portion of Area H. I'm a major property owner, shareholder in all of Sandon's businesses, and owner of Sandon's most important heritage assets. My family history goes back to the 1890s, and for the past 52 years, we have invested heavily in Sandon, both personally and financially. I was the founder of the Sandon Museum and initiator of the Sandon Historical Society. My family and friends were pushed out of the society by outsiders, and we have not been able to have any involvement in the affairs of the society since. Now, this is in regards to the question as to whether a building permit is still required for large public commercial buildings, and the dangers of unequal application of laws in respect to that. I'll continue reading. For those of you who haven't been to Sandon recently, the Historical Society started building large structures approximately 2 years ago that are purportedly to be replicas of past buildings with the intention of using them for public occupancy. Apparently, these are funded by several large government grants. They are now approaching lockup stage. I am the adjoining owner of several properties surrounding the Historical Society's construction site. This land is located directly in the flood path of both Sandon and Carpenter Creeks, and without question is at the most risk of all properties in Sandon. Fire is another issue, and so is septic being so close to the creeks. My family is not allowed to build on our land due to the hazard issues and setbacks, etc. I was curious how such a massive and apparently unjustifiable construction project has been allowed to proceed when we were told that our properties are not legally occupiable. I did not see any evidence of a building permit. I contacted our RDCK Building Inspection Department, and they confirmed that there is no permit. I can conclude that none of the hazard area considerations have been addressed, nor the septic requirements or any required engineering. It would appear that the construction is illegal, and I expect that the granting agencies were not aware of this. I'm curious if anyone in RDCK endorsed this project or was even aware of it. Certainly, there was no consultation with my community, Sandon.
Can you, so you've had 2 minutes, and we usually give 2 minutes per question, so can you get to a question?
Yes, I'm close to there. I wonder who will be liable if there is a fire that damages my properties or crown lands. Who will be responsible for illegal septic systems? This questionable project is putting my family, our businesses, and property in danger, and it does nothing to protect the heritage values of Sandon. My question to RDCK is, will you investigate this project? Can you provide a way to rectify the non-compliance with RDCK building regulations without further expenditures of taxpayers' money? But also to determine how this could even happen in the first place. Illegal buildings built with government grants, not respecting the heritage of my community, and in close proximity to the vulnerable forest are a real nightmare. Thank you.
Okay, first of all, Stuart, did you want to add anything to that response?
Through the chair, I might suggest that Mr. Wright does get in contact with our building department if he thinks that there's a building being constructed that shouldn't be. If they didn't take out a permit, we would not be aware of it. That being said, we could definitely investigate upon the formal complaint from Mr. Wright.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else has any other questions?
Do you want to ask online?
Yeah, I just want to see if there's anybody else in here. No. And online, I can't see
Valley
that
Point's
far.
left, there's Observer and a few others, but nobody's flagging.
Okay. Okay, so we're going to, it's 12:05, so we're going to recess for lunch. And come back with that last motion on the board and then go into in-camera.
So, to the chair, with the testing of the directors here, can we continue on and finish because we've only got one item and a small in camera for second.
Director report.
Director's report is still here.
Oh, director report. Okay.
So do you guys, it's up to,
Would want to plow through.
pardon?
I would want to plow through.
Okay, so let's, an unofficial vote of who wants to plow through, just put your hand up if you want to continue on. And I saw one hand up there, but oh, there's two, there's three. So that's 19 out of 20. I think that's, is an unofficial vote. Can we have a recess for 10 minutes?
Well, then I would have said much. I was like, if we're gonna plow through, let's plow through. If we're not gonna plow through. We've only been an hour, guys. We've just had a break now.
Okay, everyone, we're gonna get back to it here so we can plow through. Sorry, Director Newell, I didn't see your, no, we're not at lunch. We were yakking and we are back. We're gonna just quickly plow through this and get over and then everybody can go for lunch. So we're gonna go on to the 9.1.
Okay, thanks, Chair. So the last item arising from yesterday's committee meeting is a community works fund application, Nelson Cycling Club Enhance the Trails Project. We crisscrossed about trail talk the last previous items. So I move that this is all, I move the community works fund application submitted by the Nelson Cycling Club for the project titled Enhancing the Trails in the amount of $28,596 to be approved, with funds be dispersed from community works allocated to E&F.
Director Graham, seconds that. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Carried. We've done public time, we'll lift from the table.
4.4.
Sorry.
A recommendation.
A recommendation to lift it from the table.
So moved.
Thank you. Second. Okay, so, we're on to verbal reports.
You just on it.
That verbal reports. Yeah. Yeah,
Two
but
minutes, 1 minute.
this says August.
Oh,
Because
we referred
we referred it from August.
Yeah.
several
right.
times.
Yes, yes. So all in favor to that? Okay, so how about we go and we start at A?
Sure, I scribbled notes, thanks, Chair. Kind of disappointed the public just left. I got into a few conversations lately about public voice. Maybe because there's a potential election coming up, maybe some other reason, but I just want to share that for me, the public voice through the Reindale Commission of Management, or Economic Development Commission, or Planning Commission, Reindale Drainage and Water Committee, Advisory, Sanko Water Advisory, Advisory Planning Heritage Commission, and eventually our Regional Parks Public Commission to give us input, is continuous. And we have slates for them. Much thanks to Andrew reminding us all the time. We have memberships, we have meetings, we have online opportunity, in-person opportunity, and community for people to speak. It's been vibrant, lots of chatting with these groups, plus all kinds of ad hoc committees, meetings on the site. So I'm just saying the public voice with Area A, if they want to say something, they're able to say it, it's loud and clear. And it's a good thing, just in case during the next few months, people say, nobody's heard us. I think I've heard enough, and I'm always open to listening to more, and I just love the community volunteers and participants.
Thank you. Director Tierney.
Oh, well, and quite involved with the calls from the activities there. I chaired the AGM for the Kitchener
all of this last week. Have many issues going on. I guess I'll just comment on the fall fair for Creston was relocated to farm. Just on the edge of Creston, and it was a great success. The organizing committee did a wonderful job. And I'm sure it will be the location for the future. The community was very happy to have dirt under their feet and to see a number of hoofed animals involved with fall fair, which wasn't happening in the location at the community center. So good news, and hopefully going forward, that's the location that we use. That's all.
Thank you. Director Vandenberg.
Yes, thank you. Just a couple of things. CKIS task force, or whatever committee we're called, is back on track. And thank you for that. And our meeting is scheduled for October, which we need to finalize our terms of reference, believe it or not. So that's good news. And really, I think the other thing is West Crescent Fire Hall referendum is the advanced voting has already taken place. The formal voting will occur on the 14th September. Word from the advanced voting is very strong participation. So it will be a good exercise to see what the community wants to do for their future fire. That's all. I agree with Director Tierney, and I did attend the new location of the fall fair. It would be very interesting to see what the summary is going to be coming back to that. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Dee's not here. Director Grant.
Thank you. So there's always lots going on in Area E because we're a community of communities. So the best thing I do is I do a weekly newsletter. I think I'm on issue 92 now. So everybody's pretty aware of what's going on. And when I first started my newsletter, I used to get people responding with complaints. So, and people would say, you shouldn't do that because you're reminding them to email you with their complaints. And over time, I've actually seen a change in that. And I actually get people now emailing me, thanking me for letting them know about what's going on in the area. So that's been really good. But I just want to bring in my director time, this is the best book. This is called 13 Ways to Kill Your Community. And I know that Aiden, and I know that Andy bought it. If you guys would read one book.
Okay.
Sorry.
He's over there.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Ernie. So if you read one book while you're in office, I've read several so far, but this is the one that if all you guys can get a copy and read it, it is just amazing. It's so full of good things, and you will see people you know in this book, and you may even see yourself. So I just highly recommend it. I'm finished with it, so if anybody does want it, let me know. And if I don't know if there's any way the regional district could buy it for people, but it's just awesome. Other than that, the newsletters really tell it all, and I guess we had a fire this morning starting in Belfort. So that's kind of, we've been very lucky in Area E with the fire situation, but there's one today, so hopefully that gets put up quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Newell.
Sorry, there we go. I want to thank people for their thoughts during my hip surgery. The healing's going along nicely. Not to talk just about me, but it's my report, so I'll share that. And I just want to make a comment. We're on the hospital board, and many of us contribute to various hospitals in various ways, foundations and what have you, in our region. The Trail Regional Hospital is quite extraordinary, and they did go on a recruiting drive to hire some new, I think they're called orthopods, orthopedic surgeons. They also went through the foundation on a fundraising program for a special bed for anterior approach to hip replacement, which is dramatically less intrusive than the side access and or through the posterior or glute area. I was fortunate enough to be the 12th person that Dr. Yelkram operated on through the anterior approach. And the healing curve time, because of so less intrusive of damage, is really quite extraordinary. I just couldn't quite make it today to the boardroom. I had a little bit of pain last night, tough night. Not to talk about me, it's just I thought I was going to be able to make it, and I can walk now without crutches or a cane, and that's 18 days in. So it really is quite amazing, and thumbs up to the Trail Hospital, to the foundation, and to us as a regional hospital board for supporting the renovations to our regional hospital. It's way easier to go to Trail for most of us than perhaps to Vernon or Kelowna or Penticton. Other than that, things tick along. I'm doing okay, and Area F is doing okay. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Pick a call next week.
I was gonna say I'd put you in a wheelchair at UBCM, but Director Cunningham.
Well, I did want to wish everyone okay at UBCM. I declined because I wasn't exactly sure when my surgery was going to be, and I just couldn't, I didn't want to tie up a hotel room and that kind of thing. So I won't be attending, but I probably could have in retrospect, but I just didn't know when the surgery was. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Cunningham.
Thank you, yes. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge that we were very, very lucky this year in Area G and most of our section, and that we have missed, and I think regards, of course, to, the communities up the valley, we dodged that bullet. We did not get 2,800 strikes in the space of 10 minutes or whatever it was that caused all the fires up there. And, and I think that's good. The fact is, though, we were all prepared. I think we owe a really big hand to our EOC and the way in which they work, regardless of what we've heard from people who said, well, you didn't do this and you didn't do that. I think it also opens the door to where we need to go in the future, and where the province needs to go in the future. And I've been talking to the province and various parts of them about some of the things I have heard on about some of the more modern approaches to attacking fire. And I think that's something we really need to look at. And that is things such as firefighting at night, which is now not allowed by compensation, but what is allowed in California, where they use night vision glasses. They fight fire at night when the wind comes down the mountain instead of up the mountain, things like that. So that's what I've been doing. I've also, of course, always been doing the normal thing in town. Matter of fact, talking about fires, we had one on Saturday. A motorhome caught fire. The guy was going to go to work, loaded up with stuff. He hadn't used it for a year. He started, runs good, and then the next day starts it to go, and it goes boom and burned. I'd like to commend the Wyoming Fire Department. They handled it really well, using all the appropriate. I wasn't there, of course. I'm not a member of the fire department, but I still have an old fire dog. 50-year service. I still like to chase the fire truck with a hose. Sometimes. Yeah, sometimes. But that's yeah. And they did it well. And notice, for those of you, watch out with propane. Propane is a very dangerous thing because it can levy, which means boiling liquid expanding vapor explosion, which sends the parts of even the small propane bottles, very big wounds, and parts of propane bottles in all directions.
Thank you. Director Pavos.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, I was not that fortunate in the Slocan Valley. We had the Slocan Valley Fire Complex, and that kept me busy basically from the end of July right through August, answering questions, responding to concerns. And I'd like to thank our EOC manager, Dan. I think he did a fantastic job. We had some public meetings and everything else. I think he handled it quite well. So a great thank you goes out to you, Dan, if you're listening to us. Yeah, and our other professional people that were at the OC that answered phone, they were great at their jobs. So although some of our residents complained that they were not happy with this, and when I got calls, I generally forward them to the EOC or the BC Wildfire Service. And I think the BC Wildfire Service, when they had the Australian crew, Jason was there and, he was quite, informative. And then we had another, site commander from Invermere. They were all great, and their public information officer was super at the public meetings. And the other thing that I did, well, I did many things, but one of the other things I did was attended the Regional Connectivity Committee meeting along with Gary Jackman or Director Jackman, and I see he produced a written report, so I'll be duplicating whatever he said in the written report. And I think I'll end it with that.
Thank you. Director David. Okay, we're just gonna, he's there, but the chair's not on, so maybe he's ran to the bathroom. So we'll go to Director Hanegraaff.
So I kind of have good news, bad news. I'll start with the bad. You guys probably remember the rezoning that happened, a residence that used to be a jam factory and was being repurposed to a childcare center, which would have created 42 new childcare spots. It was in Robson. It's fallen apart. Yeah, the sellers have decided not to sell, so I'm not sure how this is all gonna shake down, because they're now living in a house that's zoned to be a childcare. So who knows, maybe it's not dead yet. Maybe we'll see another rezoning for the same property. I really don't know, but I have to say, I was disappointed. The impact that could have had on our community, would have been significant. And it's just really unfortunate. So that's sort of the bad news. The good news is, we've got a new group of people involved with the Deer Park Society, and they're very eager and looking forward to doing things. So I'm going up to meet with them October 3rd, I think. And the other thing that's going on, speaking of fall fairs, is Pass Creek Fall Fair is on the 21st, 22nd. It'll be the first time without former director Rick Smith and his very capable partner Donna Smith being involved. And so fingers crossed, but I think it'll be a different fall fair than the community is used to. But change is good, right? Other than that, everything's it's been a smooth summer in Area J.
Excellent. Thank you, Director Weatherhead.
Thank you. Oh boy, I have a hard time talking about just one thing, so I'm just gonna try to stick to, yes, we have an anxious summer season, but we also dodged a bullet, and I have to commend our all of our brigades who basically did whatever they could to become prepared for wildfire first response. They took everything, those changes way with the province, and got immediate assistance through CBT grants with supplementing equipment and training, and they did an amazing job just being ready. Another group living in Nakusp actually did respond to a fire on their own. We now nickname them the Dairyland Brigade because they literally drove up some of my area K-lands right up the hill to respond to a fire. They had a van, truckloads full of milk jugs filled with water, and then somebody came along, saved the day with his pump truck. And now he and others who are seasoned wildfire fighters through logging are actually going to start a roving brigade. So there's been lots of support, but I've been working with them a lot to get that up and running, and we are getting close to their registering their society now. So anyways, I will stop there, but I just want to say how much our Area K residents were feeling for Area H in Slocan, and I went down to the emergency center, and when Silverton was evacuated, and I was just so overwhelmed with how many people had stepped forward saying, we have space here, we have space, and they had more spaces than anybody needed. So that was really nice to see.
Excellent. Thank you. Councilor, Director McFadden.
Oh, it's me. I'll be really quick because I want to eat lunch. I'm just kidding. Two main things. One, our Confluence building opened, our new chamber, visitor information center. Some of our ACDEV stuff will be running out of there, Destination Cascar out of there. And then they have joint workspaces for shared office space, open space, all for 24 hours a day. An event space in there, Southwest partner. Anyway, so if you haven't taken a look and you're driving through Castlegar, I encourage you to stop at the tourist information. It is the first mass timber passive building of its kind in Canada. And so we're pretty proud of it. They've done a really good job with all the partnerships from the areas and all levels of government to get it up and running. And so it's a beautiful building. They're still doing landscaping, but I encourage you to stop and see that. And the only other thing I would just like to point out is
Gary,
at
can
this
you hear me?
table. Yeah,
Director David.
Director Davidoff, we're just listening to Director McFadden right now. Go ahead.
ready to start again.
Sorry about that.
I'm glad that Director Davidoff's here. So I was gonna say, the only thing I would like to say is just thank you to my direct partners, Director Davidoff and Director Hanegraaff. I feel like there's been a lot of projects we're making some good movement on and really good, robust discussions for our whole areas. And so I'm just really encouraged that I think as a working group together, working partners together, are doing a really good job, all the way from economic development to, rec side, to the chamber building, to all of these things. And so just want to say thank you to Director Davidoff and Director Hanegraaff for having really robust, honest discussions about what our concerns are and how we can work better together and for the whole region. So thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Chair,
So,
if I may I ask a
Yeah.
question of the, thank you. So, Director McFadden, where exactly is this building?
The Confluence building, the new chamber. If you're coming into Castlegar from from Selmo side, you're coming into Castlegar, you would come right past it. It's the same space as the old chamber building was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's in the exact same part, exact same location there. So the complex would be on one side and the chamber would be on the other.
I got it. Thank you so much.
I'm gonna go back to Director Davidoff. Do you have a 2-minute update?
Yeah, and I apologize. What I did is I shut my my volume off on my computer and I didn't hear that
Okay.
yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Okay,
Go
so
ahead.
thank you, Chair. Yeah, really quickly. So thank you, I guess, Mayor McFadden for those kind words. I really appreciate the fact that that we are having honest conversations that are not positional, that are actually problem solving, trying to understand how we move forward or not on different things. And that is a huge help when we're working with our partners on different things. And it's not even a matter of personal disagreement. It's a matter of understanding things and allowing the facts and data to guide our work and not an emotional reaction to anything else. And we really move forward in that. And I want to thank Henny and Marie and all the peeps at the city that we're working with. So that's really good. Just want to announce tomorrow that we have a great big community event at the Terry's Community Hall from noon till 4 o'clock. So again, I'm seeing a huge interest in since COVID in neighbors wanting to get to know each other better. What a beautiful thing. And of course, I'm supporting that 100%. And I see, like Tom, when you do your tag 'em all news stuff, like it's that's the kind of stuff that's happening right now with the Terry's Community Hall, and the corridor there. It's the same thing that's in Acres is working on that. Pass Creek has been doing it. So that's really special, really good. I am looking forward to the completion of our official community plan, and I hope we don't hit a 10th anniversary for that, but hopefully we'll get her done here in the next few months.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. I'm done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Director DeBoon.
So just in reference to 13 ways to kill your community first. Yes, I did buy this. It was sitting open on the table when my grandson came by. He said to my wife, "Grandpa's a mayor. Why is he trying to kill our community?" So he read it and he took it literally. But so anyway, it is a good book. And to Mayor McFadden, I say, "Oh yeah, our Preston Valley Services, we do the same thing you guys are doing." And we broaden our discussions as well. We have our agenda items. We bring out discussion items which are common to us and have good discussions on them and make decisions. And we try not to direct staff too much because we come up with stuff that it sometimes can be a burden on staff. And we realize that when we have these discussions, and we try to limit it to what's good for our community without pushing staff too hard, because there's lots of issues other than just what we deal with on a day-to-day basis that come up. And as an example, at UBCM, I think it's on Monday, a bunch of communities, including ours, will be discussing emergency room closures. And I'm participating because we almost have none. And neither does Golden, and a lot of communities don't. But some of the, if you read the press releases, emergency room closures are very common. And so we're an exception. And so I had a meeting with our physicians and our recruiting team about that. And of course, our recruiting team is contributed by area A and B as well. So we have another, B and C, sorry. B and C, you're on. Anyhow, with that contribution, we have a very good physician recruiting team who have done a great deal of planning with the priority of keeping the ERs open. And so I do think that we have something that we can say to them, unless it's a simple mathematical matter of you don't have enough staff. But there will be a discussion that I will be involved in. And I hope that through that, if there's something we can help them with, great. But if not, we all need solutions to keep the problems from getting worse. So it's a worthy discussion. I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. Director Hewitt.
Thank you, through the chair. First, I would like to publicly offer my condolences to Director Watson on her loss. And I was able to attend the opening of the new chamber building, which was council supported me in that. So it was sort of twofold to see it for interest, but also to do some spying to see whether it's an option for our hospital board meetings to be held there. So Stuart, if you're on,
He's on.
not anymore.
Yeah, he's there.
Oh, okay. So definitely something to look at as an option for our meetings. It's a perfect space for that. And I was, last Friday, I attended the announcement for the MRI suite at KVRH. We were given a tour of the facility by the two MRI techs who were so thrilled with the announcement, and even with the interim improved mobile unit. So they're very thrilled with the service that they're going to be able to provide to the area as a result of that work. And that I'm very happy that as a board we were able to support that. And on Tuesday I came to Nelson for the childcare meeting, which was led by the childcare development team, strategic expansion and childcare division of the Ministry of Education and Childcare. So that was very interesting. And I think there will be more to come on that, and Director Page can probably add a little bit to that. And then finally, very happy with the way our community supported the evacuees from Argenta during that 2-week period. So many people stepped up.
That's it.
Thank you. Director McLaren.
Thank you, Chair. I am also starving, so I'm going to speak quickly and less eloquently. I was away for most of the summer, right between the last two board meetings. And I watched anxiously as our area was safe, but my heart goes out to all the people who were affected by the fires. I will say, I'm still surprised and somewhat saddened that this fire smart rebates aren't taken more advantage of, because there's such a great opportunity for everybody to protect their own properties and communities. I say that at almost every meeting that I can, take advantage of the fire smart. I'm sure everybody's heard, as Director Jackman noted earlier, the agreement in principle, the AIP for the Columbia River Treaty has been released by the province. There was a local government webinar earlier this week, and there'll be, as Director Jackman said, a public session Tuesday night, I believe. So if you haven't tuned into that, please do. If you didn't tune into the previous one, please tune into the next one. And if anybody wants to chat about Columbia River Treaty at UBC, I'm happy to do that. The Cusp Harvest and Heritage Fair is coming up on October 5th. If you happen to be in the neighborhood, my brother decided to get married for a second time, so I will be in Ottawa that weekend, but please come and enjoy. Also in that same vein, the Food and Basin Buyers Expo, the Basin Food and Buyers Expo, which is a food related event, will also be in the Cusp October 24th through 26th. So we're excited to host that. Upcoming at UBCM, I've been elected or nominated chair for the advocacy committee for AKBLG. So if you have any comments or feedback on the 5 items we have on an email that I'm sure you've all received, please send them my way before Monday. Municipally, the mayor and council had a meeting with Ministry of Transportation recently about the Upper Arrow Lake Ferry. Because of there have been some service disruptions, and we are trying to increase connectivity because there is no cell service or communication of any kind. So if you've ever traveled from the Cusp to Revelstoke, it can be quite challenging if there are disruptions or need to communicate. 2 quick things.
You're at it.
Okay. 2 quick things. You're hungry. I forget if I mentioned this because we haven't done reports in a while, but the Cusp has just created the Upper Arrow Housing Society. So we are really excited to go forward with that. And then one quick last thing, the gentleman who asked a question about the asset management for the active transportation lane, I think was a very good question. And at every conversation, I'd like to bring up the real costs of things, and asset management being a really important part of every conversation.
Thank you,
very much.
Director Page.
Okay, great. I'm gonna go through all the great things that are going on in Nelson all summer. You're mostly aware because you're always here participating in our community. So we have completed Cottonwood Park with all the improvements to the parking lot and the solar sails. If you've been down for a number of events, it's quite beautiful down there. It has always been beautiful, but it's really now quite complete in a way that has made it a great gathering spot. Unfortunately, there has been bad news for the Civic Arena. We will not be opening until December at the earliest. The structural work at the Civic Center shares a wall, and it is considered one building, and that wall requires reinforcement. And so we are using the arena as a staging ground, but we will then be monitoring snow loads in the arena. After that work is complete, and potentially closing during heavy snow days, because there's been signs of distress within the trusses there. So there will be work that will be planned to reinforce the strength, the trusses into the future. The pier is open. The official opening is this Saturday from 1 to 4. We'll have music and food and vendors. It should be quite beautiful. If you haven't had a chance to jump in the lake at the end of the pier, it is quite a nice swimming hole, and families are certainly enjoying it. We put aside some pre-development funds of our affordability and supported both the Fell Street project with Nelson Shares with $5,000 that they've leveraged to get another $5,000, which they've leveraged to then go get money from CBT and the province, as well as the project that is being propositioned beside the rec center. So both of those are going to add anywhere between 35 and 50 units a piece of affordable housing, but they're in that planning stage. But what I wanted to highlight is by initially allowing them to come in with a very small ask for $5,000, they've been able to add on to that and to get to the point where they do very detailed design, which is moving them forward. The economic development has just posted a job application for a Happy Pad ambassador. It's a student-based wage subsidy, and I really encourage people to look at that program. And if you know a candidate for that program, the whole point is to connect with local residents and look at their units and figure out how best to position them. Happy Pad curates, does background checks, deals with payments. It's a nonprofit. And the whole goal is to have high quality tenants within that curated pool of applicants, so that people who are hesitant to put their units online or spaces in their house online can do that. This is coming out of economic development, specifically around recruitment for healthcare workers and childcare workers and kinds of professionals. I'm still going to go.
No, you're like at 4 minutes.
The final thing is.
Don't be disrespectful.
Yeah.
Healthcare, anyway, there's a committee and you should consider joining it.
Okay, we're gonna go on to Director Paisley.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank all the agencies that participated in helping us over the summer. I guess it was the summer, can't really recall, but few other notes. I think one of the agencies everybody speaks about but kind of leaves out, and I'd like to make sure they're acknowledged, is the Nikas Search and Rescue and the Castle Search and Rescue. We spent a fair bit of time with them over this, unfortunately, over the summer, and fortunately, I think we were lucky. It's unfortunate that we did lose a couple houses, but for the most part, pretty good. And the other few other things our staff is dealing with is we're having quite a few subdivisions in the area that we expanded to in Denver. It's called Denver Siding. So there's been lots of movement in that area, and we're glad to be able to award a contract to Renton Industries for putting in our pump house so we can get our 2 new wells up and running, so that we don't have that worry if we actually have to have a problem again. And other than that, there's a whole bunch of other things, but I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. So Director May.
Okay, thank you. It's been a tumultuous time for Silverton as well as for everybody else. Silverton now has new staff. We have a new CAO, Gina Chapin, who is being mentored through a combined effort of municipal affairs, LGMA, and another consultant that we're paying for. She's new to local government, but she is a Silverton resident. So we're firmly of the belief that she will stay. We also have a CFO and we have a public works manager now, so things are smoothing out. The Silverton Gallery, we hope will be open soon. We have some issues with the HVAC, but our new public works manager has an HVAC ticket, so he will be able to fine tune that for us. I attended the Roseberry Regatta, which is a model boat, family-oriented regatta over the Labor Day weekend out in Area H. In terms of the fires, man, oh man, Silverton Lookout is devastated, but Bannock Point campground and picnic area is sound and is beautiful. And apparently all of the fire smart work that had been done in that park was contributed in large part to stopping the fire that was moving up the lake. I hiked Bannock Point just a couple of days ago. It's gorgeous. On my FCM appointments, I will be serving on the Anti-Racism, Equity and Inclusion Committee and the Finance, Infrastructure and Transportation. So I'll be able to continue my work on the Greyhound file, which RDCK put forward 2 emergency resolutions over the past number of years. I'll be able to continue that work. Silverton has 2 new businesses open. I'm sorry, New Denver and Silverton has New Denver, the Fireweed Hub, which is co-work and food hub space. And in Silverton, the Silverton General Store, which is, it is a general store. It has a great ice cream bar and has antiques and has food and all sorts of stuff. And it's starting to be a really nice drop-in center that is helping the community to heal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Director Lund.
Thank you, and apologies, I will need to pop off at 1 o'clock. But just echoing everything that everyone said, huge thank you to all agencies and especially our EOC staff and emergency services for supports through this crazy season. And the other piece, our chief administrative officer is going on mat leave as of this week, and so we've hired an interim CAO, Trish Janelle, to support us. She's worked as a CAO with us 10 years ago, so it'll be nice to have her back. And we've also hired a special projects manager as well to support the projects that we have going on. I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, but I do look forward to connecting with folks at UBCM.
Okay, so I'll go last. I have some really exciting news and I can't wait to share it with you guys. I have two things. First of all, I'll start my timer. Our doctors have 1,300 to 1,500 patients between each for two doctors. And they, with some support through me, applied to get another doctor. They have been accepted to get another doctor. The doctors that are coming out of the schooling is only wanting to take on 800 to 1,000 patients. So they won't even look at Salmo because we don't refuse anybody that lives in Salmo or RAG. So if you don't live there, don't come and expect to get a doctor in Salmo. But they don't refuse anybody that lives there. So that's the first exciting news. The second exciting news is that we did hire a CAO. He comes from us from Alberta, Derek Kowalski. When you see him, I expect you to be able to know his name. I'm joking. I keep struggling with it. And he started on the 9th. So he's trying to get his feet underneath him. And he was CAO there. Our third thing is our Fire Smart. I've been told by Dan, and I don't know if he was just trying to boost my ego up, but he said that Salmo and REG has been the biggest uptake in Fire Smart assessments this year. And I have been speaking about it constantly when I go out, like, how come you haven't gone and done this assessment? So that's great that people are, especially when fires are getting a lot closer to home and we're not just seeing it on the TV. It's affecting us. And lots of us have friends and family. We had a great year with Shambhala this year. Nothing that went crazy. Yeah, we won't even go there. Our ambulance has been, since we've got 24-hour service, our ambulance goes out every single day. I live below it. I hear it. It's crazy. But ever since we got 24 hours, so that's good. Thanks. And I was 1 second over.
1.9.
1.9, 5.9. Okay, so
Motion to exclude the meeting, public from the meeting.
Second.
Oh yeah, all in favor, sorry. I said it in my head and I didn't. Sorry.
do serve a little tiny purpose,
I'm like, I said it, Bruce.
Your head wasn't talking out loud.
Okay, I need to go to this.
Here, we gotta wait for the. We got.
Who needs to?
There's the section 90 as well as closing the meeting.
Oh, I had to take these boxes off, sorry.
Well, should people be removed before we recess and reconvene? They're still here. It's still 3 or 4.
You mean online?
Yeah, online.